Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode number 42 of the Primetime Rundown, powered by StreamYard, right here on the Eastern Observer, I-95 Sports Network, and Zingo Television, Channel 198. I'm Ian Schraier, in the host chair tonight for Joey Jarzynka, who I am sure right now is sitting on his living room couch and critiquing every word I say. I'm sure Rob can certainly attest to that. So we can certainly say tonight, with me being in the host chair, no good could come of this. But all joking aside, I'm pleased to be joined tonight by my co-host on the Primetime Rundown, Rob DeLuca, as well as two special guests who have become quite familiar to the Primetime Rundown here, Casey Bryant, Larry Pertakowitz. Gentlemen, happy to have both of you back and appreciate you both willing to spend your Friday evening with us. Rob, let's start with you. How was your week? It's been a week since I last saw you, even though we talked throughout the week. And I do have one question for you. In addition to asking you how you are, what did you think of these?
Well, you know what? My week was great. You know, it was a fine week. No complaints, really. The jerseys came out on Monday, and honestly, the Devils did a great job. I'm not necessarily going to buy it because, again, I just have this thing against Adidas ever since they took over for Reebok and have literally struck out on every single thing they've ever done until now. So they're going to need to do a little bit more than just that. But overall, a very solid jersey for the Devils. I'd say it's a solid B+.
I was going to say, I can't say the same if you're not buying the Devils jersey. I'm struggling with the fact that they're not going on sale till December 1 because otherwise my Rangers jersey would have been in the mail already. Casey and Larry, this is each your second time with us. How are you both doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great.
Yeah.
Nice. I like how you guys kept it short and sweet. Larry, I love the haircuts, guys. You made sure to come on nice and fresh this week, and we certainly appreciate that. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to tonight first, but we have a lot to get to tonight, but first we certainly want to thank Black Cats NYC. And while you didn't hear it tonight at the start of our show, you will hear Dirty Little Hipster at the close this evening. It is available for download, as we mentioned, every week here on the Eastern Observer and the Primetime Rundown. Black Cats NYC, available for download on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Google Play, Pandora, and Spotify. Once again, thank you to Black Cats NYC and their frontman, Andrew Giordano, the uncle of a fellow family member on the Eastern Observer, Tyler Adele. So as we get started here and kick off the rundown tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I really wanted to start with last night's football game. It was an instant classic, but I feel like we've got to start with baseball. Our footprint is here in New York, and the Mets just always seem to be the gift that just keeps on giving. So the news broke just the other day that Robinson Cano had been slapped with a 162-game suspension, the second time in his career that this has happened. He tested positive for stanozolol, which, if any of our viewers don't know, it's actually the same drug that Andy Pettitte tested positive for, and that came as a result of his collaboration with A-Rod, and we know Cano's relationship with A-Rod as well, so makes us even that much happier that A-Rod didn't win the bid, and in fact, Steve Cohen did. But he will miss the entire 162-game season. He would not be eligible as a result of not playing this season for the playoffs. He will forfeit all of the $24 million of his salary back to the Mets. But yet, Mets fans are rejoicing. They're celebrating. Why? Because Steve Cohen's $14 billion is here, baby. We're talking about, if this was this time last year, guys, we're talking about how the money is probably going to be put back in their pockets instead of reinvested into the team. This is the first offseason. I can't think in maybe how many years that we're talking about the Mets going after top-tier free agents and going after big trades for guys like Francisco Lindor. Gentlemen, Rob, I'm going to start with you. Take me through what your initial reaction was with Cano, and do you see it at all possible that we may not ever see Cano again in a Mets uniform?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not all that surprised just because he's done it before. You know, it seems like a lot of these guys seem to, once they do it, they end up doing it again. So it's almost like there's some sort of addiction to this stuff. But I'm not a doctor, so I can't confirm that. But in terms of whether or not Cano is going to be a Met again or not, it's tough to say because there was another year on his contract after this season. So it all depends on what Steve Cohen and company want to do. because it's going to be based a lot on what's going to happen on this free agency. If they go out and sign a second baseman or someone like DJ LeMahieu, for example, who can play literally any position in the infield and not screw up, then you can obviously move someone like, Jeff McNeil over to second base, and the Mets could be in a very good position regardless, and they very likely may not need him if they strike in free agency, as it is very much expected to at this point.
Well, the Robinson Cano, unfortunately, the money only comes off the books for this year, but he still would have 2 more years left on his deal in 2022 and 2023 to a tab of $24 million. Certainly what feels like for Steve Cohen as chump change. There's been talks on Twitter that the Mets should finally just buy out Bobby Bonilla. But Casey, let's get your thoughts on the whole Robinson Cano. Is he going to stay after this year? What's going to happen with Robbie Cano, and your initial reaction to the news about him testing positive for PEDs?
A lot of people on Twitter, their initial reaction, what they wanted to go to was lol Mets. It's still Steve Cohen, but it's still same old Mets. Look at them in the news for negative reasons. Whereas not a single Met fan thought that way. Every single one has been plotting a way to get Robinson Cano out of Queens since the moment he got here. Robinson Cano, we were never attached to, underperformed since he got here. And now that he's off the books completely for salary, this is a blessing in disguise for what is a team that is bad defensively because they keep trying to plug and play all of these different guys around the roster. Rob mentioned Jeff McNeil. McNeil has played in right field, left field, third base, second base. He's been bouncing around the entire lineup. Now you could put him in at second base and not feel bad because that is where he's best, at second base. Now the question becomes, what do you do with J.D. Davis? The question is, do you trade J.D. Davis now or do you play him full-time at third base? Do you go after DJ LeMahieu to plug in at third base and trade Davis in a potential move for Francisco Lindor? Do you go get a Marcell Ozuna to play left and move Davis to third full-time? Not what I do, because J.D. Davis is a complete butcher in the infield, but that's aside the point. And to your question, Ian, as to whether or not we've seen the last of Robinson Cano, even though Steve Cohen has more money than God, I fail to see how Robinson Cano has played his last game in New York, if only just because that's still nearly $50 million that you'd be completely buying out. I don't see how he would write a check for that. It just wouldn't be prudent. And there's no one that would take him off of the Mets' hands in a trade. So I think they're kind of stuck with him, which is where they were before this season. Even before the season, when Robinson Cano was hitting well last year, there was no taking him because no one would eat that kind of contract, especially now when finances are being impacted by COVID and everyone's tightening their belt. So TLDR, no, Robinson Cano isn't going anywhere. Yes, the Mets are blessed.
Larry, I think we can certainly say that this is the trade that will forever haunt Met fans as the legacy of Brodie Van Wagenen as Mets general manager. It was a shortened season this year. Granted, we didn't see a full 162 game season out of Robinson Cano, but to belabor the point about him taking the PEDs, these were actually the best numbers that we saw out of Robinson Cano in almost a decade. He hit .316 with 10 homers, 30 RBIs in 49 games, a career high, if you can believe it, a .544 slugging percentage. Larry, you hear those numbers, you have to imagine at Cano's age that performance-enhancing drugs had something to do with it. Your case at this point on Robinson Cano and whether he will remain a Met after 2021.
Well, not only did he have such great numbers in those 60 games, how many times was Robinson Cano injured in 2020? And you figured, okay, he's going to be out for a while. And he was back quicker than you thought. And it was very different than how he rehabbed some injuries in 2019. So I think that does say something in regards to the performance-enhancing drugs. But do I think we've seen his last days in the Met uniform? I don't. But I think what makes this ownership different than the Wilpons is that next year, 2022, Robinson Cano would be your starting second baseman. Steve Cohen, I think, is okay with paying him $24 million, gets a few million from the Mariners, I believe, and tells him that he can sit on the bench. And that's where the advantage is here with Jeff McNeil. He's not yet getting a large contract. Move him back to his natural position, one of his best positions at second base, and then tell him you are just a second baseman. I think it will make him better. And I know people have talked about Lindor. What are we going to do with J.D. Davis? I look at it as, hey, guess what? Now we have a spot open in the outfield. Let's go get George Springer. Let's get somebody who can really play center field. That allows us to move one of our, Nimmo or something over to left. It also just opens up space for other players to get an opportunity to play. So I'm pretty excited. Obviously, at Robinson Cano's, whatever. Yeah, that is expense.
That is expense. I mean, we certainly know the questions that the Mets have up the middle of their infield, and we spoke about this with Joey, Rob, and Casey last week, and it's a name now it seems like we have to rehash again, because after the announcement came down about Robinson Cano, Tim Healy, seconds later, almost announced that this is the perfect opportunity with $25 million coming off the books to sign 32-year-old DJ LeMahieu, who has no desire to leave New York. I mean, last week we spoke about how there was an opportunity potentially arising with him with the Blue Jays. He has no desire to go north of the border. It seems like he wants to stay in New York. It seems like the Yankees and Mets are the only two teams on his list at this point. He does want a 5-year deal, which for a player at 32, and we did mention last week exactly why the Yankees did not pay Cano all the money they did, because do you want to take a chance on committing 5 years to a second baseman at 32 years of age? Now, granted, the Mets do have a second baseman on the roster. Jeff McNeil, as Casey and Larry both mentioned, his natural position is second base. Casey had mentioned last week that DJ LeMahieu, why would he want to leave the Yankees? That he built his career off playing in the Colorado air, and then to come to a ballpark that yields as much offense as it does at Yankee Stadium. So perhaps maybe the needs for the Mets were elsewhere. But now with $25 million, which Steve Cohen has already admitted and said, let's reinvest that into the team. Somebody was joking with him on Twitter about bullpen carts, but he says, let's reinvest that into the team. Rob, I know we discussed it last week. I know I denied the possibility of DJ LeMahieu coming to the Mets because I felt that the need just wasn't there. But is this a realistic expectation now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, when you've got the money, use it. I mean, there's no reason. Let's just talk about LeMahieu and what he's done since he's gotten to New York. In the 2 seasons, well, I guess, 1 season and whatever you want to call 2020, he's hitting .345 since he got here. You don't just do that, especially when you're already over the age of 30. It's clear he's still got a lot of baseball left in him. Give him like an opt-out or something after like 3 years and worry about it then, because he's clearly not going to decline until he's at least 35. And for the love of God, Brian Cashman better stop being cheap. Otherwise, he is going to lose his best player to the guys in Queens. There's not even a question about that. DJ LeMahieu has said he will take less money to stay with the Yankees. It's where he wants to be. But Cashman's got to pony that up. So what if he wants a 5-year deal? Figure it out in the contract and worry about it down the line. Please. This is not someone you give up, you just let go because they had a great year and could demand what they want. Guess what? Give it to them.
I understand your feelings on that, Rob. And as we had discussed earlier in the week, it seemed like that Brian Cashman, the general manager of the Yankees, had said, we really don't want to give up more than 3 or 4 years to a 32-year-old second baseman. Clearly the precedent is there, but the expectation at this point is that he will re-sign with the Yankees. Larry, your thoughts at this point on DJ LeMahieu?
Listen, DJ LeMahieu is a great player, and Rob said he's basically the best player on the Yankees right now. Listen, the odds are I think he is going to stay in New York. Inside, would I like to see the Mets go and get him? Of course, but I do realistically think that the Yankees will eventually get this thing done. They are a World Series contender like they always are. But I think they need LeMahieu to stay in that category.
Casey, it seems like the needs for the Mets are certainly aligned elsewhere when you have a second baseman who hasn't – I'm not even so sure that Jeff McNeil in his short career as a Met has even started a game at this point at his career at second base, because he really came up just about at the same time that Robinson Cano was traded for along with Edwin Diaz for Jared Kelenic. So should the Mets kick the tires on DJ LeMahieu? Does it make sense? I mean, this is kind of reiterating on what you said last week. Does it make sense to bring him to a bigger ballpark, or should the Mets just really have the tunnel vision and kind of keep their eyes peeled on a guy like JT Realmuto and George Springer? It seems like they're kicking the tires on everybody, but should they be focusing as much attention on DJ as the others?
I think that it's certainly worth taking a look at. Would I invest 5 years in him at this point? Me personally, no. But a lot of this has to come down to egos, right? Is that DJ LeMahieu, if he signed with the Mets, I'm sure the Mets would want to have the conversation of Jeff McNeil is a better second baseman than he is a third baseman. To help the team, we would like him there and DJ at third because DJ has played third in his career. Would he be willing to do that? Would we be willing to make the sacrifice of Jeff McNeil at third base, where he's not very strong whatsoever? Third base play was a major weak point for the New York Mets this season. Mm-hmm. Do you take the hit of Jeff McNeil at third base and keep DJ LeMahieu, who is a Gold Glover, at second base? It's like you're playing a game of Stratomatic and you're dealing with the numbers defensively around the infield. Where am I going to get hurt the least? And then when Robinson Cano comes back, you mentioned, we got to have a conversation. I think it was Larry who said that, you got to have a conversation with him and tell him that he's staying on the bench when he comes back. Will Robinson Cano's ego allow that? Clearly his ego was fragile enough to the point where he hit 250 last year and had to resort to PEDs to come back in the lineup and produce. So clearly this is someone who is affected by his performance. So as far as the infield logjam goes, I think the first domino that has to fall is Realmuto. You have to get him priority number one. Priority number two should be getting DJ LeMahieu and solving that problem, because if you're just stuck with the same rotation of JD Davis, Jeff McNeil, and bringing back Todd Frazier, say at third base, it's just not good enough at this point. It's kind of one thing has to go before the other. Ensure that you get DJ LeMahieu, then you can shop JD Davis. That seems like it would be the logical progression for the organization. Get one, then deal the other.
Larry, as a fellow Mets fan, I want to ask you your opinion here based on kind of the hierarchy that Casey presented in terms of the preference of where he'd like to see the free agents or possible trades come in. It seems like in the Mets case, he had mentioned JT Realmuto being at the top of that list. We know that the Mets have had certainly their issues over the last 15 years at the catching position. DJ LeMahieu would certainly fill a hole. Names like George Springer have been mentioned. Trades possibly for Francisco Lindor have been mentioned. The name that I didn't hear Casey really bring up there was Trevor Bauer, where the Mets, we certainly know aside from DeGrom, where the struggles in the Mets rotation lived, and that was really their 2 through 5 starters. So for you, based on what Casey just delivered as a Mets fan yourself, where would you kind of rank the free agent priorities for the Mets?
So I agree that JT Realmuto should be the number one target for the Mets. I mean, he is great behind the plate and he has a great bat. And guess what? No one is technically catching for the Mets right now, right? Ramos was let go. So they're in a position where they do not have a major league caliber player currently at that position. So that's the first spot that they have to fill, in my opinion. Next, I understand DJ LeMahieu. I understand George Springer, but I would start to move towards the rotation at that point. If you saw in this 60-game sprint how bad the rotation was outside of Jacob deGrom, and then when people started to get hurt, then even as a diehard Met fan who follows this team, you start hearing names of people who are pitching, and I follow the minors and everything like that, and I go, who is this? So they were very thin at pitching. That I think if you can add another frontline starter, they should do that. And they probably will also have to add another back of the rotation kind of pitcher, because I don't think, who they signed today, McWilliams, is going to be a back of the rotation guy. I think he's a guy who he's going to be a long reliever. He's a guy who's going to start in the minor leagues, whatever the minor leagues will be in 2021.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of questions heading into free agency, a lot of excitement, questionable excitement, I should say, surrounding the Mets in regards to free agents. But we certainly want to hear from our viewers and the ladies and gentlemen that are watching our show tonight. If you do have a question, it could be about the Mets or any topic that we bring up tonight. It doesn't even have to be related to any topics that we have here tonight. We invite you to drop them in the comment box on whatever platform you might be watching tonight, and we'd be happy to present that question to our panel. We had started to segue into the Mets pitching, and aside from DeGrom last year, the Mets were 9-21 in their rotation with an ERA of 6.34. I would say that's certainly a far cry from the days of when we were talking about the Big Five with DeGrom and Harvey and Syndergaard and Matz and Wheeler. Sandy Alderson, he hasn't waited. He's already been kind of kicking the tires, making phone calls to any available free agents at this point that are on the market. Names have surfaced: Corey Kluber, Masahiro Tanaka, Jake Odorizzi, a familiar name for Mets current pitching coach Jeremy Hefner, who mentored him to an all-star nod only 2 years ago. Mike Minor, another name that they were very interested in at the trade deadline 2 years ago and in the free agent market the year after that. So, Casey, I'm going to lead with you here. What is your wish list? I mean, there's been a lot of names. Obviously, Trevor Bauer high on that list. But where does your wish list kind of correlate in regards to what names you'd like to see be brought in? And also, maybe do you want to see a David Peterson back in the rotation from the existing rotation that the Mets have now?
The appeal of Trevor Bauer to me is that he has been very vocal throughout his career that he doesn't want to take 5, 6, 7 year deals. He would rather take short-term deals and kind of go where the competition is. It's very NBA of him, where he wants to take short-term deals, renegotiate, kind of reevaluate, reset his precedent. His agent, I'm sure, will try to talk him out of that and earn his money, while his value will never be higher than it is right now, coming off of a tremendous Cy Young campaign. But the appeal to Mets organization, I'm sure, is that Trevor Bauer will probably only be asking for 3, 4 years. He won't be asking for 6, 7 years, like a Santana type deal, like what Jacob deGrom just got, a 5-year contract. After him, here's a hot take, I think, among Mets fandom. Seth Lugo should be nowhere near the starting rotation.
100%. Yep.
Seth Lugo struggled at the end of last year, and granted, who didn't in the New York Mets organization outside of Jacob deGrom? Seth Lugo was a reliever. He wants to start. Too bad. He belongs in the bullpen. The Mets bullpen is not strong enough to the point, especially after just losing Justin Wilson in free agency. You need Seth Lugo as that rock in the back end, because no one is solid enough. Not Edwin Diaz, not Dellin Betances, not anyone, not Ariel Jurado or whoever we're trusting this week. Seth Lugo belongs back there. So the alternative then is to go all in on Bauer, try to outbid everyone for Charlie Morton. You've already brought back Marcus Stroman. You hope that Noah Syndergaard is ready by the midway point of the season. You want to try to collect now these veteran guys who are not Michael Wacha and who are not Rick Porcello, who are reclamation projects or scrap heap bargain bin guys. Now you can go after those $8 million pitchers, those $9 million pitchers that previously the only deal that you made for a double-digit $1 million player was Bartolo Colon. And that was like a big deal that the Mets got Bartolo Colon for $10 million for 2 years. Now you can throw around that money. You can get Mike Minor. You can get these guys that might be available. Odorizzi was the name that you mentioned. You should get real ball players in the starting rotation. And this is the first time since Omar Manaya's early days, when he was bringing in Orlando Hernandez and Tom Glavine and real pitchers, albeit at the end of their career, but real pitchers, Pedro Martinez, those mid-2000s Mets that actually spent.
Larry, we certainly saw the result, albeit in a short season, the struggles of trying to piecemeal that rotation together. Certainly Steven Matz appears to no longer, it's been that way for a while, but no longer be the pitcher that the Mets hope he would be after coming off Tommy John. They had signed Michael Wacha and Rick Porcello to 1-year deals, hoping to cash in on a low-risk, high-reward deal. Noah Syndergaard underwent Tommy John surgery. He's at least not going to be due back until maybe May or June. Casey had already mentioned about Stroman opting out, but signing his QO, so we know he'll be back. Where does your wish list at this point, based on what we saw last year to what we hope to see in 2021?
So with the starting rotation, you obviously have DeGrom, and I'm happy that Stroman is back. I think it was smart of him to take the qualifying offer, and it was great for the Mets that he did take the qualifying offer to at least have another starter already locked in. But I don't think he's the big prize pitching in the free agent market. They should go after Trevor Bauer. Casey mentioned a guy like Charlie Morton, right? You will get Syndergaard back at some point. You don't know what you're going to get from Syndergaard, but I think he will come back pitching with a purpose because he should, because he has not been dominant really since 2016. He showed signs in 15 and in 16. He got the chance to start the wild card game, and he pitched well, except his bullpen couldn't help him. Welcome back to New York, Familia. But with regards to Peterson, I think he should remain in the rotation. He might be a number 5 guy in the rotation, but if he's number 5, I would be very happy with my rotation. I think Steven Matz is a guy who has been given so many opportunities, and I was a fan of Matz, but I think it might be time to move him to the bullpen or, move on.
Can I just say that is genuinely the first time I've thought about Jerry's Familia since August. And that was so I genuinely forgot he existed. And I was living in peaceful bliss until this moment. Thank you, Larry.
Well, Larry, I think what we also forgot to mention in that 2016 wildcard game is the pitcher on the other side of the mound for the Giants was Madison Bumgarner, and he pitched an even better game than Noah Syndergaard did. And Noah Syndergaard left after 8 and was shut out at 8 shutout innings. Instead, it was Bumgarner who matched him with a complete game shutout. So
exactly.
Rob, as an outsider, as a Yankee fan, I kind of want to get your opinion on this in regards to is Masahiro Tanaka a name that the Mets should be considering, or where do you feel the Mets' loyalty should lie in their rotation for 2021?
It's not that Masahiro Tanaka shouldn't be on the Mets list. There's just other guys better than him, And also Tanaka's getting up there in age already. He came over to the MLB rather late, so he's over 30 now. So it's really interesting. I'm really interested to see what we're gonna do. I'm not gonna be surprised if the Yankees bring him back. Honestly, probably for a year, maybe 2. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they try to move on from him. But I'm sure he'll probably field some offers. I don't think he's going to sign back right away, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tanaka over the next couple of months. But I do expect him to return to the Yankees on a very short-term deal.
I want to create a general conversation among the group here with respect to where the Mets should really turn their attention to for their rotation in 2021. Rob, you had given us your input on Tanaka. Certainly he has an injury history as well. A career 3.33 earned run average in 10 postseason starts for a team that's aiming to reach the postseason wouldn't certainly be a bad thing as a back-end rotation guy. He's coming off a shoulder injury, but a guy like Corey Kluber, who was a 2-time Cy Young winner, didn't get a chance to play any part of the 2020 season. Didn't get a chance to play any part of the 2020 season with the Texas Rangers because he suffered a shoulder injury. Maybe he's a name that you think of. Do either of those names, I guess Casey or Larry, do either of those, and Rob as well, do any of those names aside? Because it seems like Mets fans appear to be fixated on Trevor Bauer and Charlie Morton, understandably so. Charlie Morton wants to stay on the East Coast. Trevor Bauer is certainly entertained by the words that were said by Sandy Alderson in his opening press conference on his return to the Mets. Is there a name that we've mentioned aside from those two that the Mets should really make a phone call to and try to get in on?
I think what the Mets should be cautious of is pursuing these guys through a trade. I think the reason why Morton and Bauer are so attractive is because it wouldn't take anything other than money to get them. The fact that you would be trading for a pitcher, more often than not, when you're trading for a big-name pitcher, they want pitching prospects in return. The Mets have none. The cupboard is bare, and that's entirely because of the previous administration here in the Brodie Van Wagen era. I hope he's enjoying his days on the beach here as he kicks back and relaxes and watches Anthony Kay in a Blue Jays uniform, watches Justin Dunn in a Mariners uniform. Not for nothing, but all the Mets fans freaking out about who our center fielder is going to be. And go get George Springer. Jared Kelenic would have been our starting center fielder next year. Let's call it what it is. But anyway, to the original point, they should be targeting guys that wouldn't cost any assets to get because really they have to be extremely protective of their prospects, what few they have.
Larry.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And I know we don't know who the new president of baseball operations will be. We don't know who, if there'll be a general manager as well and who that will be. But we know from Sandy Alderson's past is that he is not somebody who is going to quote unquote give up the farm for somebody. Even if you look at the trade, I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago. If you look at the trade for Cespedes, they gave up Fulmer, right? Oh, okay. And Fulmer, came on like a bolt of lightning, right? And now, who's Michael Fulmer today, right? So at least a guy like Sandy is patient and knows what to do in regards to trading prospects. But the last administration has traded away so many prospects. They may have drafted well, right? But those players are so far removed from being able to play major league games that I don't know what value they have to these other teams. And, I'm looking at the list of the other pitchers who are available, like those lower level pitchers. And there's definitely a drop in quality after you get to Trevor Bauer, Charlie Morton, and, Tanaka. After that, there is a drop in quality where you start to feel like you're the Wilpons and you're back in your normal aisle where you've always shopped.
You had mentioned that there's really no president of baseball ops, no general manager yet. Hopefully those positions, or I should say the Mets are hoping to have those positions filled sooner rather than later. Some of the names being rumored, Mark Chernoff from the Indians, Bobby Heck from the Tampa Bay Rays. Those are the names that we've heard the most frequently. But the name that we're hearing even more frequently now with regards to front office vacancies is Theo Epstein, who has now just stepped down recently as the president of baseball operations with the Cubs. And this is going to lead into our 6:31 sports update that we do here on the Primetime Rundown, that as our show airs from 6 to 8, we have a sports update at 6:31 to represent Suffolk County and a 718 to obviously represent New York City. Our show does not start at 5 o'clock, unfortunately, so we cannot do a typical where Long Island, which is our footprint, can't do a 5:16 and a 6:31. And unfortunately for people like Rob in New Jersey, there is no 9:73. So this is our 6:31 sports update. And Theo Epstein has announced the architect behind the Red Sox and Cubs curse-breaking championship-winning teams. He was there in 2004 as the general manager when the Red Sox broke their curse. He was in Chicago in 2016 as their general manager when the Cubs broke their curse. And he hasn't completely shut the door on a front office job, but he says he wants to take the year off. He's aspiring to eventually join an ownership group, so eventually he would like to be a CEO of a franchise, but he hasn't completely shut the door on a front office job. The reports are that the Phillies are going to reach out, and I'm sure they're going to be one of many teams that would look to covet the services of one of the best general managers in all of baseball, just simply based off reputation and longevity and history. But where will he end up at this point? We'll see if he takes a year off. If he doesn't, we shall see. Let's move across the Triborough Bridge to the Yankees, where the Yankees, whose bullpen has historically been so reliable in regards to having pitchers like Aroldis Chapman and Zach Britton and Tommy Kahnle, and we go down the list. It always seemed like every year when we entered the baseball season that the Yankee bullpen was never the issue that we had to worry about. It was maybe the rotation, but if you could get the ball to the 5th or the 6th inning, that the door was going to be shut just based off having guys, like I said, like a Chapman, a Britton, a Betances. But for the Yankees in 2020, a 60-game season, nevertheless, a 4.51 bullpen ERA. Their relief pitchers had a negative 0.8 wins above average. That was the lowest of any position for the Yankees in 2020. Chapman and Britton are expected to be back. Chad Green, who I think the Yankees are still hoping he would refine his form from only a couple of years ago. Tommy Kahnle has elected free agency. He's coming off Tommy John. Adam Ottavino's name has been bouncing back and forth on the trade block. Can you depend on guys going forward like Luis Cessa and Jonathan Holder? Rob, let's start with the Yankee fan here. The setup and closer roles still appear to be locked in for another year, but where can the Yankees turn to at this point for reliability and middle relief?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough that we lost Tommy Kahnle for the year and now he's gone. because he didn't want to go. He just not want to take his minor league assignment. I don't blame him for that. But at the same time, a player takes that as a slap in the face. So I would be very surprised if he comes back unless he obviously would do it for a pay raise, but I don't think that's going to happen. Brian Cashman has enough to worry about in terms of spending money, apparently. But, the Yankees are still the Yankees. That they'll still spend a little money to make things better. But it has been weird with the Yankees for the last couple of years in terms of the refusal to address pitching problems, mainly starting pitching, because like you said, Ian, their bullpen has historically been one of the best over the past couple of years. I cannot picture that we're going to make too big a splash on the pitching side, really. I just don't see it. I think they really do want to see Chad Green get back to what he was, and I believe he can. I do not think we saw from him this past season was anything of showing what he really can do. I would say let's give him another year. Me personally, I would love to shoot Luis Sessa and Jonathan Holder to Mars, but nonetheless, I have patiently waited for these guys to come into their roles and be effective out of the bullpen, and they have literally disappointed me almost 95% of the time. So I would love to move on from them. The Yankees also have guys down in the minor leagues. Now it'll be interesting to see what our new minor league affiliate, the Hudson Valley Renegades, can eventually bring the Yankees into the local minor league team. Shout out Casey Bryant right there.
Shout out 845. Go Gates.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see now that the Yankees have new minor league affiliates. So it's almost like it's completely different players, completely different system. So we will see what will happen with the Yankees between now and the start of spring training. Well, I'm sure we'll see some names that we might not expect, but at the same time, I don't expect them to go out there and get someone like, Trevor Bauer or Charlie Morton. Would I want them to? Sure. Charlie Morton's not necessarily out of the question because he will cost significantly less than someone like Trevor Bauer. But it all comes down to what are they going to do with someone like Jay Happ, which I hope it's finally time to move on. But, things remain to be seen. Brian Cashman is a wild card at this point.
Larry, there aren't a lot. It doesn't seem like the free agent market is filled with prospects of top-tier free agent relievers. The one name that certainly does come up a lot is Liam Hendriks from Oakland, but Hendriks is a closer, and that's not a position that the Yankees are looking to fill right now, and I'm not so sure that even if he'd be coming to the Yankees and almost guaranteed a spot in the postseason every single year, that Liam Hendriks would be willing to take a demotion, so to speak, to a 6th or 7th inning role. Is there someone in free agency right now that maybe the Yankees can turn to, or is there someone that the Yankees already have on their roster that you think is going to step up for them in 2021 and solidify that bullpen?
Well, look, it's something that the Yankees have done, right? They have multiple closers in their bullpen, right? They have Chapman, they have Britton, right? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So yeah, okay, you can go in and bring in Hendriks, but now you got 3 guys who were major league closers, and now that sounds great. We got a 7, 8, and 9, but it doesn't work that way. I remember, all right, I don't want to bring it back to the Mets, but I remember years ago when the Mets had gotten J.J. Putz, and I remember talking to you about it, saying,
Yep.
"Wow, we got another closer. This guy's going to pitch the 8th inning," and it didn't work out that way. But relievers, it's always a tough market, right? Relievers are volatile. You go year to year on most relievers. The Yankees are used to, for 20 years having the best closer of all time, right? And he did it year in, year out. You don't normally see that in Major League Baseball, especially today with all the advanced statistics. You just see that the hitters are able to gain an advantage at some point with all the data that's out there now. But I do think the Yankees have to do something. I'd love to see Adam Ottavino actually step up because he was a guy when they picked him up, I figured it would be lights out for them. And he didn't have a great 2020.
Casey, your thoughts?
I think that you should never count out the Yankees to bring in anyone. You know, you can look up and down the free agent list and say, that guy's a closer, he may not come here. That guy's a closer, he may not come here. Zach Britton was a closer for Baltimore. Who remembers screaming at Buck Showalter for not bringing in Zach Britton during that playoff game against the Toronto Blue Jays, instead relying on Ubaldo Jimenez to deal to Edwin Encarnacion. So that's why I don't really count the Yankees out of anything. They would absolutely throw the bag at a Mark Melancon if he showed interest in New York. They would absolutely show interest in Liam Hendricks, who is one of those names that always gets bandied about. What about Alex Colomé? Shout out Hudson Valley Renegades. Alex Colomé, former Gage short season Rays prospect, eventually went to the White Sox, wiped the floor with the AL Central. He's one of those guys that I fail to see how the Yankees don't go in on anyone, because they are, at the end of the day, the Yankees. They don't care about need. They don't care about any rules. They say, we're the Yankees, come here, and you will win. And that's what they did with Britton. That's what they brought back Chapman when a closer role wasn't necessarily guaranteed. They dealt with Dellin Betances when Betances was at the top of his game. Could have closed somewhere, didn't. He stayed a setup man. It's what the Yankees do.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, Casey, you're right. That is what they do. It's just a matter of how Cashman does it. Because, like we've seen, we're Yankee fans on Twitter, you know, the very smart people of them, so they say, will be like, oh, yeah, we need – but they're right when they say, oh, go get us a starting pitcher. Brings in Giancarlo Stanton. Oh, go get us the starting pitcher. Brings in DJ LeMahieu. Granted, that was still phenomenal. And please, for the love of God, bring DJ LeMahieu back. Give him whatever he wants. Pay him. Hand him the check. Say, write a number, and sign it.
Bob, when you're dating, you can't come off this desperate. You know, you have to be able to play.
No, there's no playing DJ. When you're dealing with the literal god of short of small ball hitting, just give them the money, please. But yes, I do think that the bullpen, they probably will reach out to maybe one guy, you know, try to get that seventh inning in. But I do think they want to see Adam Ottavino get back to that, and I really hope he does get back to that, because that 2020 season of his, as Larry said, really did just go yikes.
Brian Cashman, if you're listening, Rob DeLuca says, write DJ a blank check. And I'm sure he is speaking for many Yankee fans who feel that way about DJ LeMahieu returning to the Bronx. But the concerns are there for sure for the Yankees right now with regards to their middle relief and also their rotation. I mean, aside from Garrett Cole, Tanaka, Paxton, Happ right now, all free agents don't appear to going to be re-signed by the Yankees. Maybe we'll see something down the road where they bring one or two of those guys back. Let's wrap up the baseball portion for tonight with respect to Cooperstown has announced that the Hall of Fame ballot is out. I've got to say there's certainly a lot of uninspiring first-timers on the ballot this year.
That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah, I don't think Nick Swisher earned maybe 75% of the vote, or Dan Herron or LaTroy Hawkins, but I think there are a couple of interesting names. They're not first ballot Hall of Famers at all, but I think names like Mark Burley, Torrey Hunter, Tim Hudson are names that maybe we could see down the road that would get enough of the vote, I should say, to at least stay on the ballot and maybe down the road get inducted into the Hall of Fame. But it begs the question, guys, could this be the year where we see the cheaters get into the Hall of Fame? Last year, we certainly know what happened with Curt Schilling. He got 70%. So coming into this year, he's only 5% off being inducted. Clemens at 61% and Bonds at 60.7%. So with a weak class, guys, is this the year we could see one of those cheaters go in?
I mean, look, I'm not going to say that they deserve it because, you know, cheaters should never prosper, but you know it's going to be it's going to be close. As I believe these guys some of these guys are on their 9th year out of a possible 10. So they are definitely running out of time here. So the closest guy right now is Roger Clemens, and the most he's ever seen is 61%. So that's a long ways off from 75. So it'll be very close to see. In terms of someone I would want to see get in there, finally, I mean, I know they haven't even been on the ballot that long. Well, give or take what you think is long. But I would love to see a guy like Omar Vizquel and Billy Wagner get in there. This is long overdue. Two legends of the game that rightfully deserve a place in Cooperstown. If literally I've taken a look at this whole list right here, those are absolutely my top two that I want to see get in right this second.
But you have to remember that whoever's going in as part of the 2021 class is certainly going to be overshadowed by the fact that they're going to go in the same year now as Derek Jeter, because there was no enshrinement ceremony last year in Cooperstown because of everything that took place with COVID-19. Larry, your thoughts on the Hall of Fame, and is this the year that we see a Bonds, a Schilling, a Clemens get in?
And you know what? I think, unfortunately, this is going to be the year where we are going to see one or two of them get in. But I think, the baseball gods may have aligned the stars perfectly, because if there is a ceremony in 2021, they will be overshadowed, as you said, by Derek Jeter, someone who is has a great baseball resume, is well respected throughout the league, is never known to cheat, and it might be perfect to have him be the face of the enshrinement ceremony. Oh yeah, we also have somebody like a Clemens or a Bonds behind you, but it'll make it all about Derek Jeter. It may be the perfect scenario in which to have one of these guys come in his shadow. Do I think one of them is going to get in? At least one of them will. I mean, Curt Schilling got 70% last year. You look at the ballot, the number of first-timers that are on here. I mean, you said it, but at first glance, most of these guys are not Hall of Famers. Mark Burley did have a great career. Is it Hall of Fame worthy? I'm not sure. Torrey Hunter had a great career. Tim Hudson was good. But then you go down the line after that. I understand Aramis Ramirez, was a good ball player. He played also for a very long time to achieve those stats. So I think it's a weak first-time class. I think because of that, one of these guys, maybe two of them, has to get in, but Derek Jeter will overshadow them.
Rob kind of touched on it there, Casey. One of the names that I'm certainly interested in to see if he gets in, he had gotten 52% of the vote last year, is Omar Vizquel. Unfortunately, his numbers with the bat always seem to, how can I say it? It looks like that his numbers with the bats appear to be the deficiency for him in regards to getting into the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's got the best fielding percentage of any player at his position in Major League Baseball history. He's an 11-time Gold Glover, a 3-time All-Star, made most of his living as one of the best shortstops in the game with the Cleveland Indians. Do you think that we could see an Omar Vizquel, or as Larry said, a Billy Wagner, and Rob said it too, get in this year? Or is this the year, as we had discussed when we first begged the question, is this the year where we see a cheater get into the Hall of Fame?
For Omar Vizquel, I think that, the bat was never his strong suit, but let's not write him off as a poser. Bill Mazeroski was a fake. Bill Mazeroski couldn't hit to save his life, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Omar Vizquel hit 300 a couple times. Omar Vizquel has 2,800 hits. And granted, he is a little bit of a compiler in that regard, but he still was a capable hitting shortstop, which is a position which is not always known for its offense. If you look at the late 90s run that he had in terms of averages, going down the line, 297, 280, 288, 333, 287. That brings you to the turn of the century. And those are real numbers. So Omar Vizquel, I have no doubt that he'll eventually get in. That's not a concern. What is my concern and what is my cause that I will rally around, I will get the crusade going, is for Billy Wagner. Now that Edgar Martinez is in, I can refocus my efforts from championing one cause to the next. Because Billy Wagner was the best closer in baseball, not named Mariano Rivera.
He was for a time, for sure.
He was. I would argue, there wasn't a single moment in his entire career where he wasn't that guy. He had 1 year one year where his ERA was above 3, and that was a year in which he pitched 20 innings because he got hurt. Every other year, his ERA was under 3. He had a better ERA than Trevor Hoffman 9 times. He had a better whip than Trevor Hoffman 8 times. He had a better WAR than Trevor Hoffman 9 times. The only reason why Billy Wagner is not a slam dunk Hall of Famer is because he didn't pull a Trevor Hoffman and pitch until he was decrepit. Trevor Hoffman, if you remember at the end when he was trying his darndest to get to 600 saves with the Brewers, was embarrassing. It was such a spectacle of how the mighty have fallen, and he's crawling to that 600th save to where he got yanked from the closer role that season in favor of John Axford. The Brewers were literally saying to themselves, take anyone. We don't care. He said, Trevor, it's great. You're 3 saves away from 600. We don't care. Put in John Axford. So Billy Wagner was at his peak better than Trevor and saved everyone the embarrassment of watching a Billy Wagner that couldn't pitch, especially when his last season was his best season, debatably. So Billy Wagner is 100% deserving to be a Hall of Famer, if only just because no other closer, again, outside of Mariano Rivera, gets to go out on top. Billy Wagner went out on top. Lee Smith didn't go out on top. Lee Smith went out a minor leaguer in the Royals system. He got cut twice from 2 different AAA squads. Brad Lidge didn't go out on top. He had a 7 ERA and got cut. Jose Valverde didn't go out on top. K-Rod isn't going to go out on top. No other closer gets to have the reputation where Mariano, Billy Wagner, and no one else. Dennis Eckersley didn't even do it. Dennis Eckersley was politely told by the Red Sox, have you considered coaching? It's that's a true story. Billy Wagner deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because he saved everyone the embarrassment of looking back on his 40-year-old season going, he didn't have his fastball anymore. He always had his fastball, and he deserves to be in.
Casey, does it seem like, and I feel like this is always the case unless your name, as you mentioned, is Mariano Rivera, but you had mentioned a great name in Edgar Martinez about whether or not designated hitters belong in the Hall of Fame, and certainly the same statement is made for closers in the Hall of Fame. Do you feel as the same with DHs that closers get a bad rep when it comes to being enshrined in Cooperstown?
100%. I think that even setup guys the save is the only thing that anyone ever points to when they look at relievers, right? Which is such BS, and I think that you're eventually going to start seeing a revolution in that regard, if only just because wins are slowly declining in overall value. The case in point, the Jacob deGrom career. But Billy Wagner has the saves. Billy Wagner retired, I believe, number 3 behind Rivera and behind Hoffman in saves. So he was always kind of at the top. And closers get a bad rep. We shouldn't be living in a world where Jack Morris, who is, very good pitcher, don't get me wrong, but is not even in the top 15 of starting pitchers of his era. He's in the Hall of Fame. Mike Mussina, good pitcher, very good pitcher, but give me the best pitchers of the 1990s. Where's Mike Mussina? 10, 11? He's behind Glavine, Maddox, Smoltz, Halladay, Clemens, Martinez, Johnson. There's 7 off the bat without thinking. So we shouldn't be letting in the 15th best starting pitcher of his era and not the 2nd best reliever of his era. It's a double standard.
Larry, Rob, you guys agree with Casey's point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, he hit the nail. He hit the nail on the head there. I mean,
this is my soapbox. I'll step back now.
No, but yeah, that was their job. Their job was to be a closing pitcher. They have just as much right to be in the Hall of Famer as anyone else. Just like a designated hitter. That's their job. That's what they're getting paid to do. They're getting paid to hit the ball. If they're hitting the ball well, put them in.
The shame is, and I hate to keep jumping in and interrupting, but this is a cause I feel very strongly about. The shame is that if we're not letting in Billy Wagner, we're never letting in Joe Nathan. And Joe Nathan is a Hall of Famer. We're never even going to consider Francisco Rodriguez. And Rodriguez, well, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, should get votes. He should get
career record for a reason, right?
Yeah, he has that 60 save season. K-Rod was really good for a long time. It's just a shame because you brought up the steroid era users, right, Ian? If we're not letting in Barry Bonds, we're not letting in anyone. That's the standard we've set. So Manny Ramirez should be in the Hall of Fame. isn't going to get there. A-Rod, going to be very interesting to see what happens there. David Ortiz, who is both a steroid user and a designated hitter, going to be very interesting to see what happens there.
Larry, your final thoughts before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm going to jump on exactly what Rob said. They have one job, and you know what? They have a pretty tough job. Shut the door. Come in. It's a tight game. The game is on the line, big pressure situation, and you got to get the 3 outs. Sometimes it's more than that, but most of the time it's you got to get 3 outs. And there's no doubt about it, Mariano is the greatest of all time. And I think it's important that he was also the unanimous Hall of Famer, because with that, at a position that was always the question of, well, he's a closer, he only pitches 1 inning, right? The writers decided, all of them together, that this guy deserves it and that he is the greatest of all time. So I think that also may open the door for closers to get into the Hall.
Gentlemen, let's shift the needle now to the gridiron, where last night we saw another instant classic between the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. Both quarterbacks were efficient. They were brilliant, especially Kyler. And I'm not having any favorites here, but it seemed like he was struggling in the first half because on a sack in the first quarter, he afterwards had experienced some shoulder discomfort. In the end, Carlos Dunlap, though, for Seattle, makes the game saving, I should say, sack to sack Kyler Murray on 4th and 10. As a football fan, I didn't understand why they were taking deep shots down the field with that much time left in the fourth quarter on 2nd and 3rd down. But in the end, it was the penalties that really did in Arizona. 10 penalties for 115 yards. We'll get into them a little bit deeper, but there were certainly 3 of them that played a huge factor in the result of the game last night. Larry, let's start with you. Your instant reaction to last night's game.
Going into this game, it was the Seattle Seahawks defense. Their defense isn't playing well. They played a great game last night on defense. They held the Arizona Cardinals to, I believe it was their lowest point scored this season, yards. Kyler Murray is a great football player, but they were able to contain him. On that final drive, they were able to put the stop in Dunlap coming through. What a move to get him. And it again says the NFC West is by far the best division in the NFL, and it's going to be a wild ride. Even with your Rams, it's going to be a wild ride getting into the end of the season.
Rob, your take on another instant classic between Arizona and Seattle. It seems like we're set up for this for years to come.
Yeah, no, I'm loving the way the NFC West is playing out right now. It's going to be a great race towards the end. Last night's game, phenomenal, and on a Thursday, no less. That's a rare occurrence with these awful, with the reputation of just awful Thursday night games. Usually, we finally put 2 good teams on Thursday night, and look at the result we get as a product. Phenomenal game. I thought both quarterbacks were great. This was a dogfight right to the end. And in the end, you just even without fans, apparently it's just too difficult to try and win in Seattle.
Yeah, no, Rob, my highlight of Thursday night football is normally the fact that you can watch it in 4K and HDR. It's like, all right, cool, I can watch it and it looks really cool on my TV. But to be able to get a good game at the same time is amazing.
Nice added bonus there, and just apparently Seattle's just that hard to win. And you know what? This race is going to be fun down the stretch.
Yep.
Casey, it seems like we're really set up for the next decade in the NFC West, at least with 3 of the 4 franchises in that division. Arizona with Kyler Murray. We know about Let Russ Cook in Seattle, the legend of Let Russ Cook. Jared Goff in Los Angeles. The jury still remains out, I guess, on Jimmy Garoppolo, but there's something to be said about being the defending NFC champions. Do you feel that way about the NFC West going forward, and your instant reaction to the game last night?
Isn't that wild that we're talking about a team that was 5 minutes away from winning the Super Bowl? All of a sudden, we're throwing up our arms going, they're not that great. That's the beauty of football is that every single year is a complete question mark. You never really know what's going to happen. What I was really surprised by was the Cardinals' complete inability to move the ball on the ground. It was the first time all season that they had been limited to under 100 yards rushing, and they didn't even come close to that marker. They had, 57 yards, I think, on the ground. They just were unable to move the ball. And granted, if you have that receiving core, why not try to take shots down the field with Fitzgerald, with DeAndre Hopkins, with Kirk? But it was really the rushing game to me that stood out as a big difference maker, because when the Cardinals are successful, they're able to do both. They're able to take those shots down the field, and they're able to get it to Kenyon Drake to push the ball forward. And they weren't able to do that last night. And it was almost like a repeat of the Legion of Boom, with the Seattle Seahawks, where they were able to hold the line on the defensive front. And that was really, really strong from Seattle. It's going to be as Rob said, great push down the stretch between two really strong teams.
Yeah, it was nice to see the Seattle defense, as Larry had mentioned too, to finally come alive. They were running a lot of blitz packages, as we saw out there, and someone in the secondary that loves to be involved from his time with the Jets on blitzes is certainly Jamal Adams, and we saw that a lot last night. But credit to Kyler Murray. I mean, he didn't get off to a great start. I believe they were down 14-6. The Cardinals were at the half. For the game, he was 29 of 42 for 269 and 2. But in the second half alone, he was 19 of 25 for 166 and those 2 touchdowns. Russell Wilson, on the other hand, 23 of 28 for 197 and 2. Another instant classic. I would not be surprised if we're watching these two teams duke it out again in the playoffs. And that kind of leads us into our next conversation with respect to the NFC West. And I believe we're insinuating, it's going to be a 3-horse race to the end, unfortunately, because of all the injuries that have befallen the 49ers. Granted, when Larry was on the show 2 weeks ago, we weren't even ready to count the Rams as a possible playoff team. And after they took care of Seattle, we're talking about the Rams possibly winning the division. They're only a half game back. Arizona only 1 game back at 6-4. The Rams are the only team left in the NFC West, at least that's in contention, that still have to play. They'll play Brady and the Bucs on Monday night. But I guess let's start with you. Where do your allegiances lie at this point right now with the NFC West?
It's going to be a very tight finish, but I do think Seattle's going to end up pulling this out by the end of Week 17. I think that there's too many weapons on offense there that can't be stopped. I mean, look, you got Russell Wilson, a quarterback who can clearly still deal it. You've got young guys in DK Metcalf, who can literally catch anything if it's in his vicinity. If it's literally within his arm reach, it's getting caught. And then, of course, you've got a little old reliable in Tyler Lockett there is in your second receiver. It is, and then, of course, you've got the return of Carlos Hyde last night with a phenomenal running game by him. There's just so many weapons on offense there. Like, look, I'm not counting out Arizona. Like, you got Kyler Murray playing some phenomenal football lately. You've got DeAndre Hopkins, who's a freak of nature. Larry Fitzgerald showing apparently, hey, I may be old, but I can still play this game of football here. And so it's going to be close, but I think in the end, Seattle's just a little too powerful for a younger team like Arizona.
Even for a team, and Larry, give me 1 second there, but even for a team like Seattle, whose defense has been struggling all season, they've been missing their running game the last few weeks, and it was great to have Carlos Hyde back. Chris Carson is actually due back soon. The Seahawks, in fact, and they had mentioned this on the broadcast last night, have the easiest remaining schedule in the NFL. 5 of their final 6 games are against under 500 teams. Next week, they play the Eagles. Then they've got the Giants, the Jets, the Washington football team before they finish the year against the Rams and the 49ers. So it seems like the carpet, Larry, and I'm not sure if the Seahawks are your favorite right now to win the NFC West, but it seems like the carpet has really been laid out in front of them.
Well, I mean, I was going to say the remaining games that Seattle had. So you've already done that for me. I believe they have the easiest schedule in the division the rest of the way. And, I know that Arizona was just coming off of the Hail Murray game on Sunday. They had the short week, and that Seattle may have caught Arizona at the right time. But Seattle also has the benefit of a schedule that they can take advantage of. Arizona also has some tough games. I just want to take a peek at the Rams schedule for you because I know somebody had also mentioned them. The Rams' remaining schedule is actually kind of tough. They do have Tampa, and they have San Francisco. They still have to play Arizona twice, and they have to play Seattle again. And they do have to play New England. We don't know what New England will be by week 14 because we don't know what kind of team New England actually is. We know they're not the same team that they were, but we know it's not like playing the Jets or anything like that. So, the Rams do have a tougher schedule. So we'll see what they do on Monday night against Brady, in which we'll get to later. But that's my game of the week coming up.
It's funny, Larry, how you mentioned that. We just got a comment from Tom here, Tom Casey, who says it's the Rams' division to lose. And then to add to that, he actually mentions that Seattle hasn't looked good in weeks. They caught Arizona on a week coming off a Hail Mary. So, Tom, thank you very much for the comments. Casey, let's shift gears here to you a little bit. Arizona, I mean, look, they've gotten some questions defensively. It was nice to see Isaiah Simmons, their first-round draft pick out of Clemson, finally have his first real good game last night. It seems like he was all over the field. They also don't have a very easy finish either. They still got to play the Patriots. They got 2 games left with the Rams. So it seems like in regards to the NFC West, we may not find out a winner till week 17 at this point.
That is very true, Ian. And I was going to say that with this whole logjam that we have at the top of the West, you just want to fast forward to week 16 already, because in week 16 and week 17 is the NFL does this with their scheduling. It's all in division the last 2 weeks, and it's going to cannibalize that entire division. So you can say that it's the Rams division lose. Seattle hasn't looked that great. I mean, that may be the case. They're not the strongest defensive team in the world, but they go through the NFC East for the rest of the division. And the NFC East is the weakest division in football. And they play the Jets as well, do they not?
They still have the Jets in 3 weeks at home. So.
I mean, they're cruising until that week 16. The question will become, can they provide enough separation in those weeks? You have to win out against the NFC East, beat the Jets, and hope that the Rams at that point, do they struggle against a strong offensive team in Tampa Bay? That tough game against the Cardinals. Again, they have another interdivision game. It's going to be really tough for the Rams to hang tight in that division. We'll learn a lot on Monday, I think, from their matchup with the Buccaneers, but the strength of schedule is something that really comes into play in football more so than any other sport. So I think that it's going to be really tough for the Rams. I don't think it's impossible, but I do think it's the Seattle Seahawks, if only by virtue of Roger Goodell and his series of Excel spreadsheet crunchers.
Yeah,
go ahead, Larry.
It's very likely that Arizona and LA week 17 could be Sunday Night Football. Because they always flex that last game in with playoff implications. It could be Dolphins, Bills. They could be playing for the division in week 17, but you also got Arizona and LA. That's probably going to be a game to watch.
Casey, I think your point is very valid in respect to that Jared Goff. I mean, that's the question mark. He has not been the same quarterback that we saw since the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I think Rams fans and the entire National Football League is waiting for Jared Goff when he has weapons like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and Tyler Higbee, and to utilize those weapons, the right way. So yeah, I think a lot's going to come down to Monday night's game against Tampa Bay. I want to play a little buy or sell here with you guys before we shift to our next topic here in the NFL. Rob, we're going to start with you, and I see you rubbing your hands together.
Buy or sell.
Do all 3 teams make the playoffs, Rob? Buy or sell in the NFC West?
Oh, that's a close one. And you know what? Just based on the way everything else is going, record-wise, I think I got to buy here. I got to buy into this. This division is so competitive. It is so phenomenal to watch. It is literally the best football you can get. And thank God I have NFL Red Zone so I can at least catch some of these games for when they're not the national game of the week. Mm-hmm. Because I get stuck with all these crappy local games on Fox and CBS, like the Jets and the Giants. but nonetheless, I do think it's very possible for all three to sneak in right now because you look around. The NFC East is literally going to have one team in there, and they're going to unfairly be a 4 seed, which is just ridiculous. But there's nothing you can do about it. That's the rules right now. I do wonder if this season in the NFC East will make them reconsider those rules, but that's a discussion for another time. But yes, and then you look at the NFC North, and it's just like the Bears are finally plummeting, I should say, back to earth in a fast way. So the Vikings are on an up climb, but the question will become, is there enough time left for them? Because they started out so weak, but now that they're finally getting their groove back, it's going to be close, but it's very difficult to say. I mean, the Packers are probably looking pretty comfortable right about now, feeling pretty comfortable in the NFC North. And then you look at the NFC South, and you look at something like you see the race with the Saints, but now we'll get to poor Drew Brees in a few minutes. The Bucs are hanging in there. So, but right now, these three teams have the best records. So right now, all three would be making the playoffs if the playoffs started now. So I think it's very safe to say, without the division play, because obviously they're going to beat each other up a little bit, but if they can win their games outside of the division, especially someone like Seattle and others who do still have to go through some of the NFC East, it's going to be a tight race, but yes, they can all easily get in.
As Rob DeLuca decides to jump through every division in the NFC and give us the whole picture, I should now ask him about the AFC. But Casey, your thoughts, buy or sell on all three teams in the NFC West making the playoffs?
I'll buy that, if only just because the alternative is buying the Chicago Bears. And who would want to do that right now? I don't think Mrs. Foles wants to buy the Chicago Bears right now. I can't see them making the leapfrog. I can't see the Minnesota Vikings making the leapfrog. I mean, I find it very hard to believe that they'll lose that grip. Granted, Arizona has been slipping a little bit, but I mean, again, the goal is to outplay the Bears. When you're being pursued by like a monster and you're with your friend, you don't have to outrun the monster. You just have to outrun your friend and let your friend get devoured. So that's all the Cardinals have to do at this point.
Larry, buy or sell?
You know what? I don't know if I'm going to buy it yet because I don't know what's going to happen in the NFC South because you have Tampa Bay, which now has the complete opening to get in there because of Drew Brees' injury. And I know you said that we are going to get to that. But if you look at the Saints' remaining schedule, it is not that difficult. And if they can survive, I think they have the opportunity to take one of those wild cards. They still have to play Atlanta twice. They have Denver, Philadelphia. But then those final three games, if you can be healthy for 15, 16, and 17 against Kansas City, Minnesota, and Carolina, then I would say the Saints have a shot. If they're going to miss Drew Brees for the entire season and, this Winston and Hill combination doesn't work, well, then, yeah, I'll buy on all three.
Yeah, I think the question with Carolina is, and I think that they're even a fringe playoff team if Christian McCaffrey is healthy, because we certainly
my fantasy team wants him. They want him back dead.
We certainly are seeing the struggles without him, and Teddy Bridgewater is really making the most out of his opportunities. And even though I picked on him early in the season, I think Matt Rule's doing a good job keeping that team prepared in what is a division with two teams at the top that are the real cream of the crop. In the NFC South, let's keep it, gentlemen. Then with the NFC South and the news for Brees is obviously not good. It's great to see all the prayers and all the great comments on social media in support of him. He left the game at halftime last week against the 49ers, did not return. Went for an X-ray and revealed fractured ribs and a collapsed lung on his right side, which is his throwing side. The initial report was that maybe he'd be back in 2 weeks and they would reevaluate. It appears that there is no timetable, and understandably so, for his return. I think the way we've got to look at this, gentlemen, is that this isn't mending a broken bone. These are your organs that are now compromised. He's going to be 42 this January, so we know that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think anybody would blame him, even if he doesn't go out the way Peyton Manning did, to just step away for health purposes. But Rob, let's start with you. What does it look like going forward right now for Drew Brees?
It's real tough. I mean, this guy is a football legend. He's got his ring. He gave the city of New Orleans a great celebration, and he's one of the all-time greats. He's right up there. You'll never convince me otherwise that he's not arguably top 5. You're not going to convince me.
Top 3 even. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. You can't convince me otherwise. And it's just real tough to see these legends go out the wrong way from a fan perspective, I should say. You never want to go out on an injury that's out of your control. It's real sad to see. It's tough, and I really do hope that, because I'll be shocked if he's back this season. I really will, because this is very serious, especially for someone who's this old. For anyone really, we're talking about vital organs here that are now compromised. But yeah, exactly, precisely, Casey. He's fine. But no, in all seriousness, I would not mind Drew Brees coming back for one more year, going out the right way. Because to me, the right way for a legend to go out is playing your final game, regardless of what your team does, in front of your fans, regular season, your final game, with a crowd going nuts. So I would love to see him back in 2021 and go out the way he came in, which was pretty much screaming.
Larry, I'm going to age ourselves here a little bit. When Drew Brees came into the league with the San Diego Chargers, we were 16 years old in 2000, and we've watched him progress. As growing up as a Notre Dame fan, I would hate having to play Purdue for 4 years, because that meant I had to watch Drew Brees put up 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. When Purdue was rocking Notre Dame, but Larry, we've seen him win a Super Bowl. Everybody here has seen him win a Super Bowl, but we saw him we remember the beginning of his career. What's your take right now on the news surrounding Drew Brees? Because it's just so unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. It is heartbreaking, because like Rob said, you want to go out on top, especially a guy who is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a guy you look back and go, wow, San Diego Chargers moved on from Drew Brees for Phillip Rivers. It's kind of funny, right? And
remember, Larry, the reason that they moved on from Drew Brees was because in the last game of the season, before he actually was supposed to be dealt not to the Saints but to Miami, who was actually coached, trivia question, by Nick Saban at the time, and said he did not want Drew Brees. Everybody thought that Drew Brees was never going to make the full recovery. I guess who's laughing last right now? The Chargers and the Dolphins, I'm sure, would have loved to have had Drew Brees for 20 years, but please continue.
Of course. And he deserves to go out on top. He deserves to be in front of his fans and to play one final season. But here's the issue. In the NFL, in a position such as quarterback, the most important position on the field, if you are not able to play to the same caliber, how can a team basically give up on a season to let someone, ride out into the sunset? That's the only difficulty that we may have with Drew Brees, if he's not performing at the same level to bring this team to the promised land in 2021.
Casey, I hate to ask this question, but I think we certainly have to at this point. We have to think now from a football perspective, how are things going to look going forward for the New Orleans Saints? The Saints have come out and announced not Jameis Winston, but Taysom Hill is actually going to start this Sunday against the Falcons. I'm sure at some point we're going to see Jameis Winston. Granted, he's a year removed from a 30-touchdown, 30-interception season, so we know the arm strength is certainly there, and he filled in the second half in what really became a runaway against the 49ers last week. What's your take on really going forward? Obviously, I want your take on your feelings on Drew Brees, but also what is your take going forward on the Saints and the NFC South?
Well, the news about Drew Brees is fantastic for Saquon Solo, my fantasy team, which Tyson Hill still has tight end eligibility on ESPN. So we're cashing in on those points, baby. In the interest of taste,
insensitively, Casey Bryant.
That is the Casey Bryant I know and love.
Yeah, all the best to Drew Brees. Yeah, get better soon. Drew Brees is going to come back, if only just because there's not an injury in football that you can't come back from. Alex Smith is proof of that. Alex Smith came back onto the football field after an arduous recovery process. And it's Drew Brees that we're talking about here. I have no doubt that he's going to come back. The quality remains to be seen, whether it's one farewell game or he gets an entire season at some point. It's up in the air, but I have no doubt that he's going to come back. It's just that kind of optimism always surrounds Drew Brees wherever he goes. And along that same line, optimism should still follow the New Orleans Saints because let's be honest, they were 5-0 last year with Teddy Bridgewater. The foundation has already been laid for this Saints team to succeed without Drew Brees. So whether it's Hill under center, whether it's Winston under center, I think that you have two capable candidates to step in and replace Drew Brees. And the Saints were not Drew Brees. The Saints were Drew Brees in an offense with Kamara, in an offense with Thomas. They have such a arsenal of weapons that it was never just the quarterback that made things work. Certainly helped, but it wasn't the Drew Brees show. And that's what makes the Saints such a strong team that will continue to succeed with or without number 9.
We've reached just a minute after 7:18, and we certainly wanted to make sure we got to our 7:18 sports update, and we will get back to football news because we certainly have plenty of it with just about 40 minutes left to go in this show. But the NCAA did announce that the 2021 NCAA Division I tournament, for the college basketball fans out there, I know I'm one, Rob certainly one, that it is going to be held, but it's going to be held in a bubble-like atmosphere in Indianapolis. It's certainly understandable that the NCAA, whose offices are based in the metropolitan Indianapolis area, that's where they would hold them. Locations and facilities are still being determined as to how they're going to work that out. I'm sure we'll see places like Bankers Life Fieldhouse, maybe the arena on Butler's campus, places like that will certainly see be utilized. And in addition, obviously with to give the student athletes the experience, I'm sure we might see a Lucas Oil Fieldhouse used this year as a spot for the Final Four. But we saw the bubble-like atmosphere work for the NHL. We saw it work for the NBA. Just one thing is for certain, and I'm sure the 3 other gentlemen on this broadcast with me on this podcast can agree that the NCAA is in dire need of making sure that the NCAA tournament goes off without a hitch. There's just way too much money involved in that TV deal, and the amount of money that they lost between the basketball tournament, the men's and women's college world series, the lacrosse championships, and so on and so forth. It's just a lot of money that they can't afford to lose right now in 2020, 2021 when the economy is just so bad right now. But so that's the announcement from the NCAA that, that the 2021 NCAA tournament will be held in the surrounding Indianapolis area. Let's shift over now, maybe back to some football here. And the New York Football Giants, Daniel Jones single-handedly had the best game, and I don't think there's any arguing it, the best game of his career. A horrific 8-game losing streak against the Eagles, a losing streak that dates back to 2016 is now over. 27-17 was the final. Daniel Jones, 21-28, 244 passing yards, 64 rushing yards, 34 of them came on a touchdown run, one where he did not slip and fall at the 5-yard line. And then what makes it even better is the fact that Daniel Jones had no turnovers and the second best Pro Football Focus rating of any quarterback in the National Football League in Week 10. Rob, let's start with you, my fellow Giants fan on this show. Has this win given the Giants the momentum that they need to possibly win the division?
Well, first and foremost, finally it's over. The awful losing streak to the worst football team in the history of existence, maybe in all of sports. I don't know. But that felt so good to say. It's unfortunate our Joey Jarzynka could not be here tonight, who is our resident Eagles fan. And, I would have loved to have voted on him tonight.
Is that why he's not here? He ducked out because
But nonetheless, Daniel Jones, phenomenal game. And to answer your question, Ian, this was pretty big for the New York Giants. This was really big. This put them back in the NFC East playoff race. As sad as it is to say, the 3-7 New York Football Giants are now just a half a game away from overtaking first place in this god-awful division. We are potentially back to talking about the playoffs which I really didn't think we were going to do 3 weeks ago.
We were talking about Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. All of a sudden, we're talking possible playoffs.
We're talking Super Bowl.
The Giants have gone down now for number 2 from the number 2 overall draft pick in the 2021 NFL draft now to number 8, actually in the draft order. And I just have to obviously include this comment from Joey, who's obviously watching. So there's a response from Joey Jarzynka. Obviously how he feels after his Philadelphia Eagles lost to the New York Giants.
Bring the salt.
27-17. And yeah, the Giants are, as we say, Casey, are a respectable 3-7. And even with the Eagles right now in the win column, the Eagles have the Browns coming up. They're going to travel to Cleveland and play the Browns. The Giants are on a bye. What's your take right now on this absolutely porous division, which the Giants now have a shot to win?
My initial take is revisionist history, which is, can you imagine if the Giants pulled out just one of those 7 games that they completely butchered in the fourth quarter? Just one, and they'd be sitting pretty atop the division, which is ludicrous to think. What's going to save the New York Football Giants down the stretch is that their divisional opponents have kind of an equally tough schedule, right? The Eagles play the Cleveland Browns, as you mentioned, this week. Not a cakewalk. The Cowboys have to deal with the Vikings. Not a cakewalk. The Washington football team has to deal with, down the stretch, the 49ers, who are still tough.
This week. So that's not an easy game either.
Yeah, so the Giants have a bye, and which gives them an opportunity to recover from this inadvertent COVID string that they've run into, but also they come back and play the Bengals, and the Bengals are not a very strong team. That gives them a chance to maybe get a leg up and build some confidence heading into that all-important matchup, the game of the country, 4:00 on December 6th against the Seahawks. So it's going to be the pressure, I think, is on all of the other teams in the division to not blow it. Because the Giants, no one counted them in the division race. The pressure is entirely now on the Eagles and Cowboys to live up to the expectations that they had, because no one thought that the Cowboys would be 2-7. No one thought that the Eagles would be 3-5-1. It's entirely the pressure on them to succeed, not the Giants. The Giants are not failing. It's not the other way around. That's all the Giants are trying to do, not fail. The Eagles and Cowboys have been trying to succeed, and that's the difference. The Giants can sneak their way in that way. Will it happen? I don't know. Could be. Who's to say? You hate to see it, Joey.
You really do. Oh boy, it looks like we've Ian's connection may have gone a little soft there. Hey, Larry.
Either that or he's in rictus.
He's the other. But Larry, why don't you give us your thoughts on what you saw from the Giants this past week? And Larry's the show is crumbling right now. The show is crumbling, and I don't know. Oh God! And Ian has dropped out of the show.
Oh,
I don't have the graphic. This is unprecedented.
Can we get that comment, Rob? You're fired after the show. Back?
At this point, all right. Look, let's try to go. Ian, Larry. How is your audio? Are you back? Let's hear you.
I'm back, right? You got me?
There you are. Yeah, you're good. All right. So, yeah, all right. Larry, why don't you talk to us a little bit about those New York Football Giants, what you saw this past weekend, and what is the hope? What is the hope for the division, I guess, at this rate?
Listen, it's like you said. Who would have thought the Giants would be in the conversation for winning this division? It really shows how weak the division is, how bad Carson Wentz has been, what the injury to Dak has done for the Dallas Cowboys. But you know what? It opens the door for the Giants. I mean, the Giants, they will have a tough stretch. They got to take care of business against Cincinnati, because you got Seattle, you have Arizona, you have the Cleveland Browns, who I think would be a tough game. And then after that, you got Baltimore. So, you're going to get a tough stretch. But on top of that, the Philadelphia Eagles aren't proving that, don't worry, we're going to beat our teams too. I mean, Philadelphia has not played well. I have not liked what I've seen out of Carson Wentz. I got him in a fantasy league, and it's killing me. Sorry, Joe. But they're starting to get it together. If they can start to click, anything can happen once you get in.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, let's continue on the Giants here. Little personnel change news, not just the COVID outbreak, but I believe it was yesterday. Giants offensive line coach Mark Colombo was given the boot. After 2 straight wins, the Giants have replaced him with former Colts offensive line coach Dave DiGiulimo. So this will be really interesting to see how the offensive line, who seemed like they were having a little bit of upwards in performance, deal with a brand new coach. Casey, are you surprised by this midseason move?
Well, if you're going to believe the rumors, he wasn't just given the boot, he was given these hands. There was apparently some fisticuffs between him and Joe Judge, if you're going to believe some of the rumors coming out of Giants camp. That is kind of surprising that they would make a move, but again, let's get back to the original point, which is that the Giants are not necessarily succeeding. They're not failing. So you can say that the Giants have been playing relatively well. They are still, 3-7 or 2-7, whatever the record is, 3-7. So it's not like they were a great football team yet. They are still growing. And Joe Judge is in his first year as head coach. He's still trying to find out who he works well with in addition to the roster. So if he felt that a change was made, he wanted to bring in the Colts coach and who has a great offensive line coach resume under his belt. That's his guy. He wants to bring in his guy. And the reports are that Colombo objected out of ego. That's what the rumor is, that he didn't want to be kind of cast aside. He wanted to be the offensive line coach. They butted heads, and that is the story that is being spun. Whether or not they went 7 or 8 rounds on DAZN it remains to be seen. Was Michael Buffer there? We can't confirm. But that is the trend. So it's not like the Giants are going to be completely upended by this move. I think it's just a matter of Joe Judge trying to find the right ingredients to the soup of success for his team.
Larry, this is obviously one of the weaker lines that DiGiulimo is going to be working with compared to his Colts days. Do you think what challenges do you see that he'll face with what is a much more notable weaker line than what he's used to from his Colts days?
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand you bring in new leadership and maybe you can get some more out of these players, but these players are also only as good as the talent allows. So it's pretty difficult to bring in a guy, but then say, here's all you have to work with. So will we get some improvement? I think we will. But I don't know if we're going to get enough where you turn around and say, okay, it's been completely revamped and they're a new line.
No question about that.
Yeah.
There's still many obstacles for this offensive line to face, especially when one goes down with an injury, another goes down with COVID, and then now about 3 of them have COVID. So it couldn't be a better time for the Giants bye week, and our host, Ian Schraier, has returned from the grave.
Thank you.
Ian, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Larry. Thank you so much. Sorry, guys. It appeared my internet had dropped out, and unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to jump in with you guys, but it appears from the conversation that the discussion surrounded the entanglement, so to speak, between Joe Judge and the offensive line coach, Mark Colombo. So I didn't know if there was more to add. I just think from my personal opinion, based on the culture, and I kind of leave this as an open question to the 3 of you, it kind of feels like what Judge is trying to create there. It has a very Tom Coughlin-like feel. This isn't what we've seen from coaches like Ben McAdoo and Pat Shurmur. There's just an accountability factor. And I know that the Bill Belichick coaching tree has not had its fair share of good history recently with respect to Romeo Crennel, Charlie Weiss, Josh McDaniels. Obviously, Josh McDaniels is going to get another opportunity, but we're seeing guys now like Joe Judge, Brian Flores in Miami, Mike Vrabel in Tennessee, who are starting to turn around the Bill Belichick coaching tree. But getting back on point here, does it, I guess, Rob, I guess we'll start with you. Does it feel a little bit like this has a little bit of a Tom Coughlin feel from an accountability and a mutual respect approach?
I'm not going to go there just because Tom Coughlin to me is incomparable in terms of Giants coaches, and Joe Judge has been here for 10 games. But look, I love what I've seen from Joe Judge in 10 games than I did in, was it 3 years of Pat Shermer? Or 2 years? I don't even.
2, yeah.
It felt like 3. And then 3 years of Ben McAdoo. I've already liked what I've seen more from Joe Judge in 10 games of that than I did in the time with Ben McAdoo and Pat Shermer put together. So he's certainly already above them in just 10 games, and we're 3-7. So let's just put that into perspective, that we can be 3-7, and I still love the coach and what he's doing, the culture he's bringing in, more than what I saw from the last 5 years.
I think what it comes down to, and you said it best there, is what we saw from Joe Judge out of training camp and during the preseason was that we saw that he knew when he had to be a begrudging coach, and we knew when he had to be hard on them. But we also saw the video of him, with them hosing down the field to create mud for them to slide and try to recover fumbles. And Joe Judge got right back in there and just created culture. It just has that kind of feel that things are turning around for the Giants, Casey.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to liken it to other New York sports franchises. People want to see accountability. You had mentioned Tom Coughlin. He's not Tom Coughlin yet, but that's what he can strive to be. When Phil Jackson left the Knicks wanted stability. They haven't gotten it yet. They hope that Tom Thibodeau can be that guy, but you want a culture change. When Brody Van Wagenen and the Wilpons left the Mets, Met fans wanted stability. They wanted accountability, and that's what they appear to be getting in the Alderson and Cohen regime. With Pat Shermer out the door and the future of Dave Gettleman in question, people want accountability, which hasn't been seen since the end of the Coughlin era. And Joe Judge is trying to instill that. And part of that is because he did come from the Belichick regime. Bill Belichick is a guy who doesn't take no crap. It's while it hasn't translated to great record-wise success, his coaches do kind of carry themselves the same kind of way. So it's him trying to instill what he's learned and impart it onto the Giants. I don't mind the move, especially not if it was as raucous and distracting as the reports seem to be indicating that it was.
Larry, your thoughts right now on, it's only been 10 games, but it seems like Joe Judge is really taking control of that locker room.
Absolutely. And Joe Judge is a breath of fresh air when you compare him to Shermer and McAdoo. Right. Tom Coughlin was a great coach, and he'll be remembered, for those Super Bowls in New York. But since then, there has been no stability at all in the head coaching position for the Giants. And so having Joe Judge, even though it's only been 10 games, not with a great roster, you're obviously missing your feature back, which definitely hurts them. And you have a young quarterback who's trying to learn with, not the best receiving core. But with all that said, I got to give Joe Judge credit. And I think he might be here for a long time.
Let's shift gears again here, guys. Stay in the football realm, but let's do a little NFL buy or sell. And there's really only one team right now I want to focus on, maybe two. But the first one I want to focus on is it's the only team in the league right now that's still undefeated, and that team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. A couple of weeks ago, we had Jim Wexell on from the Steel City Insider here on the Primetime Rundown to give us his insight into how he sees the rest of the Steelers season going at that point, and that was following the win over the Ravens. And obviously we discussed last week on the show what had gone down in regards to the game with the Cowboys, but they are 9-0, the Steelers, for the first time in their history. And this goes even back to the Steel Curtain teams of the 70s. We're just past the halfway point of the season. Larry, let's start with you here. Do the 2007 Patriots, in your opinion, have possible company? Could even the 72 Dolphins have company at this point?
Oh man, it is possible, because every time you think Ben Roethlisberger is done, he's been able to come through. I mean, the thing for them has been that he has stayed healthy, right? Normally by this time in a season, Roethlisberger is either missing time or is about to start missing time. So if Big Ben can stay healthy with that receiving core, they have a shot. I mean, really, when you look at the schedule, they have 3 tough games left on the schedule. They have the Baltimore Ravens, they have the Buffalo Bills, and they have Indianapolis. Outside of that, every other game should be winnable for them. And I know Buffalo is a team. Are they for real? We'll definitely find out in Week 14 when they play each other. But the Steelers, they had missed Deontay Johnson for a number of games, and you know what? That's okay because they just continued to keep moving the chains, and it could be something special in Pittsburgh. I'm not a big Steelers fan, so I hope not. But they're obviously going to be a beast in the AFC playoff picture.
So I guess to assume, Larry, you're a buy right now on a possible Steelers 16-0.
Yeah, yes, I am a buy on it's possible. I'd like to see what they do with Baltimore the second time in Week 12.
I think it's interesting, Larry, how you mentioned there.
Oh boy,
that Week 16 game against the Indianapolis Colts. We could certainly see a flex to a Sunday night game for a game between two teams that are thriving right now in the AFC. Casey, buy or sell right now on a Steelers team possibly going 16-0?
I'm going to sell that notion, if only just because I think the Steelers haven't shown me that they're dominant yet. When you think 16-0, you think of dominance, right? The perfect Dolphins team, and I go back to the 2007 Patriots as well. The 2007 Patriots didn't experience a scare of losing their perfect season until Week 17 against the New York Football Giants, and they still won it because a good team finds its way to win, and they were able to ride that confidence and that kind of juggernaut potential all the way to the Super Bowl. And for this particular Steelers team, the Titans almost did it to them. The Texans almost did it to them. The Giants opening week almost did it to them. So I'm not wholly convinced on the Steelers being a dominant team yet. I saw the graphic on when the Steelers were playing the other night, where it was the first time they started 8-0 in their franchise history. And I thought to myself, how is that possible? I feel like the Steelers predate the Civil War, and never in their history have they started 8-0. That almost seems impossible. So do you feel like when you're watching the Steelers team, you're watching the best Steelers team in existence? I just don't see it. Rob, your take.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell this Steelers. I'm with Casey 100% on this. This is I'm not gonna say a bad undefeated team because you're still undefeated, but this is not by any means a lethal force of an undefeated football team. Casey, you named all the teams that almost did it to the Steelers and ended that. Another one you left out just a couple weeks ago, Dallas. The little Ben DiNucci-led Dallas Cowboys nearly did it to the Steelers. But then, of course, the Dallas Cowboys that we have seen this season showed up, beat themselves, and the Steelers went on to win. But, yeah, I don't know about this. Like, we'll see what happens in what is an obvious trap game on Sunday against Jacksonville. And it's on the road, no less. So there's going to be some fans, Jaguars fans in attendance. I'm sure there'll be some Steelers fans in attendance too. They travel well. But it's not exactly an easy schedule. They've got the Ravens. Luckily, they got the benefit of that at home on Thanksgiving. But Thanksgiving, Thursday night football, you don't know what you're going to get. So we will see what we see there. Then, of course, they have to travel to Buffalo a few weeks after that. And then it's at home against the Steelers. And then, like everyone does in Week 17, you're playing your own division. And by that point, you think the division is won. If you're the Steelers, you hope the division is won by that point, to the point where you can rest your starters, and you're not really expected to win that game. So it'll be close, but I'm selling. I don't think they make it.
Clearly, those three games are the biggest ones to mention in 2 weeks. Yes, I do agree with you, Rob, that the game at Jacksonville this week is certainly a trap game. The following week, Thanksgiving against the Ravens, as Larry and Rob both mentioned, huge. The other two games, Buffalo on a Sunday night, and then Indy, very much a possibility.
Ian, if I can interrupt for a second, that's actually pretty key. If you think about it, they've got this trap game on Sunday, and then it's a short week to play your toughest game of the season on Thanksgiving.
No, yeah, that's true. That's a great point. So, and the Indy game, I think, is just primed to be that Saturday night game that we see around Christmas time in Week 16, and I don't even want to in Week 15. I don't even want to, kind of play off the Bengals as a possible spoiler, because Joe Burrow really appears to be coming into his own a little bit, and we're seeing they're still struggling defensively, but offensively they have the keys to put it together right now with Burrow, Mixon, and AJ Green. The other piece that I really wanted to kind of dive into with regards to buy or sell are the Miami Dolphins. We discussed them last week as maybe that team that we could see that would rise through the playoff ranks and maybe find a way to sneak in. They win their 5th game in a row. They're now 6-3, very much alive in the playoff picture, but they're doing it a lot off their defense. So, Casey, let's start with you. Buy or sell on the Dolphins with them, A, making the playoffs, and B, can they actually keep up this pace defensively?
I think the Dolphins, I'll sell on them if only just because I think they're going to run into a wall. I think they're going to get they'll keep their winning ways alive against Denver. They'll keep their winning ways alive against New York. And they even have a easy game against Cincinnati. They're going to run into a wall, mark the calendar, December 13th against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to expose the Dolphins for what I think they really are, which is, a very good team, not a great team. And then they have to ride out the season playing the Patriots, and the Patriots are always motivated to play their division opponents. And after the Raiders, they have the Bills. So I really think that the Dolphins have to extend that winning streak to 8 before they get to the Chiefs. Otherwise, they have no chance of going very far, if at all, in the playoffs. I'm not buying in on the Dolphins yet. I think that there's too much magic right now surrounding the Tua and surrounding their defense, and not enough concrete, sustainable long-term football yet. I think that once they run into the Chiefs, you'll find out if they're a real football team or not.
Rob, last week when we were on the show, when Joey had asked us who you thought that team could be that maybe would surprise teams in the playoffs, you had mentioned the Cleveland Browns. Last week, what felt like could have been a letdown game for the Browns was really a letdown for the entire league that set the NFL back about 30 years in a 10-7 game between the Browns and Texans. Curious to get your thoughts now on the Dolphins, buy or sell.
Yeah, this is close. This is tough because Casey kind of said it perfectly. They absolutely have to win these next 3 games. And here's the thing. 2 of them are back-to-back traps after this weekend. The Jets and then the Bengals. That's back-to-back trap games that you have to go out and win, because I do agree with Casey. It's going to be ugly on December 13th. Yes, it's in Miami, but I don't think that matters at all. Not the way the Chiefs play football. They went into Denver in the snow and took care of business. So it's clear weather doesn't play a factor to them whatsoever, and it'll be ugly. So yes, I do believe the Dolphins need to be 9-3 by the time they get to that trap game. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for them to make these playoffs. And for that reason, I think. And then if they do sneak in, what they'll do after that? Look. I do agree. Tua's a little overhyped. Casey kind of took every thought I could have possibly said here because he's just that good. That's all. There's nothing I can do about that. He's just that good. But yeah, look, Tua's young. He's obviously going to play in the playoff game. He's obviously going to be the guy in the playoff game should the Dolphins get there. But that's also going to show a reality check that, sometimes they need time to grow. It's not that they're going to. It was bad. It's just it's not enough experience. So overall, I do have to sell on the Dolphins.
Larry, you're a Jets fan, and I have to ask, no one, I think, in this group sees the Dolphins more than you do as a Jets fan when the Dolphins play the Jets twice a year. Are you a little surprised from what you've seen from the Dolphins 9 games in, and for you, buy or sell on how they look going forward?
I am going to sell on them for the reasons that Casey brought up. That's the analysis of the show, is breaking down those week 14 through 17 with Miami. But I think that Miami is a pretty good football team. And as a Jets fan who has to deal with Adam Gase, at least I can take solace in the fact that teams can do well post Adam Gase. So I can't wait for that era to begin. I know if it works in Miami, God, I hope it works in East Rutherford. But I think Miami is a pretty good team, but I think they're being carried by their defense. They're going to have a lot of tough games coming up, and I don't think that Tua has shown
that he can put this team on his shoulders yet. But like Rob said, he's a rookie, hasn't played that many games. He's got to learn. I don't think this is a situation like the Jets had with Mark Sanchez in the beginning of his career with back-to-back AFC championship games. I don't think that team is here with the Dolphins.
It's interesting for Miami because in the last 3 weeks, the Miami Dolphins have combined to score 91 points. 24 of those points have come off special teams, and 34 of them have come off turnovers. So if that shows you why maybe to be a sell on the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa in his first 3 starts has averaged only 170 yards, which is very, very typical for a rookie quarterback in the National Football League, unless your name is Patrick Mahomes. But, you would see from a rookie quarterback a lot of possession throws. And we've seen a lot of ability so far from Tua Tagovailoa that maybe we wouldn't have seen just yet. The way he scrambles, the way he escapes the pocket. We're seeing more and more of that in the National Football League, especially with respect to Tua and a quarterback, not even so much like Russell Wilson, but like a Kyler Murray that just has that baseball type running ability to really get around the edge as fast as they do. And both Tua and Kyler have that ability. All right, let's shift gears again here. Let's get to the part of the show that I know Rob and Casey have really been looking forward to talking. And I know Rob mentioned at the start of the show when we asked him about the Devils uniforms and that Adidas never seems to hit the mark. I do miss Reebok as well. I'm not going to lie. I think I said at the top of the show that as much as I love the Rangers jersey, it would have already been in my mailbox if they weren't going on sale December 1st. So I am very much looking forward to getting my Artemi Panarin jersey when that day comes. So Rob, we're going to start off with we've got 3 Ranger fans in the room and 1 Devils fan. So let's start with the Devils fan in the room. You're a little outnumbered here, but
hurts, but not surprising.
So take
Devil fans get outnumbered in their own building. Why shouldn't you be surprised?
That's what we get from that's what we get for moving to a 10-minute train ride from Penn.
Trying to separate the animosity right now between the Ranger fan and the Devils fan in-house. But Rob, I'd like to know, I mean, there were so many great jerseys that were released the other day, and there were also a few bombs, to say the least. So I'm curious, who were your winners and losers of a reverse retro in the NHL?
All right, for my winners, I'm going to go straight forward. The Buffalo Sabres, I think, put out the best jersey out of everyone. That is beautiful. They've saber swords. I like the clever idea of putting Buffalo on the stripe there at the bottom. It's not too plain. There's not too much white because it is a white-based jersey. I'm glad they used up a lot of the space. It is gorgeous. I think it's the best jersey in the game. Another winner I had out there, I believe I said the Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche had, who doesn't love a good tribute to the Quebec Nordiques? That I personally would have enjoyed seeing the Avalanche logo on it instead, just like I would have liked seeing the Hartford Whalers jersey throwback with the Hurricanes logo instead. I would have liked to have seen that. You see, I think that would look a lot cooler with the Hurricanes logo in those colors.
So you'd be talking a little, and I know we're going to get to it with Casey because he's already repping the colors. You would be looking forward more to something like that with the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, and that's my third winner. I love the tribute to the North Stars. This is and the Wild. It's the Wild logo on it, so it's even better. An absolute home run there. Phenomenal job by these 3 teams. The losers. Well, let's start with Ian's neck of the woods, but not his team, and that would be the New York Islanders.
Ugh.
Could you please get more? Please, I dare you to try to be more boring. This isn't anything new. This is literally their jersey now, unless the shade of blue is a little darker.
They went with the early 2000s navy.
Yay! We can relive Mark Parrish days now, and vintage Miro Shatan. But this one's the worst. This I think is the biggest loser of them all. The Detroit Red Wings. This is such a monstrosity that Ian had to get a picture of it this close up.
Hide the sleeves.
It is just that bad. It is I think it's white, but it's also covered in gray on the sleeves. This isn't anything. And then finally, I'm not a fan of gray jerseys, really. And that's why the San Jose Sharks are my final loser here.
Oh, see, I like San Jose. I like how they brought back the original logo for the Sharks. And trust me, I'm not trying to suck up here to Joey by saying that because I know the Sharks are his second favorite franchise in the National Hockey League.
I think it'd be better if it wasn't a gray base because look, the sleeves are cool. The sleeves are cool.
Great.
The logo's fine. Why is it gray though?
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I just love the debate here, and we did get a comment from Joey in regards to the Islanders jersey, and I have to put it up there about him wanting to pull out his Roberto Luongo jersey. And then after that, I believe Joey did like my Sharks comment, so the answer to that is Ian 1, Rob 0. In regards to the Sharks logo. I mean, I wish
the salt, Joey.
You know what? I didn't like it when the Sharks. You know what? I did like their branding a little bit with the way that they changed up with the numbers and the names on the back, but I didn't like it when they basically turned the shark into a half a fish. I really didn't care for that when they rebranded. Casey, your winners and losers, sir.
You know, I think that, well, first off, I do want to show off that I am wearing a North Stars sweatshirt, just proving that I'm cool and hip. You know, I appreciate the teams that went bonkers. You know, the Anaheim Ducks bringing back Wild Wing is ludicrous. Who looked at this and said, yes, bring it back. I want the Comic Sans font. I want the
Casey, and I hate to interject. Can you answer me a question? Sure. Of all the jerseys, you couldn't have gone with like the Korea Solani days with the purple jersey and the mask that we saw in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2003?
I think the only reason why they didn't like go with like the true jade and white and egg and teal jersey is because they kind of already did it last year with a black base. And granted, that jersey didn't come out very good because it's a black base and it's just trying to hop on the trend of black alts.
And still made by Adidas.
Right. Well, you know, that's a whole other discussion. But like, it's the craziness factor is what teams tried to lean into between that and the Arizona Coyotes. Throw that baby on up there.
That's so bad.
Yes. That's bad. Coyote. Yeah. So the wildness for me, I mean, honestly, for me, the winners in terms of, because I am a jersey purist at heart. So the winners to me are the ones that still look classically good. I just wanted to make sure that we got those images on the screen so that now you can't unsee them. In terms of my three winners, I'm going to start off with Montreal. Montreal's is a really classic look. I didn't think that I would like the inverted colors as much as I do, but the blue and blanc and rouge all look really good. It's a classic layout. Really love their design. Second winner for me, in the theme of Rob's trend that he wanted to see of logos in different color schemes, the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings combined their best colors of the 70s and 80s with their best logo, which is that of the 90s of the Wayne Gretzky era. And that's what this whole project should have been about. Right, is trying to mesh together your old designs to create something new, something evocative, something unique. And that's why, you know, something else that works is Calgary's improvement of Blasty. Blasty the horse this is something that's taken that was a little silly when it came into the league in the 90s and 2000s and improving on it. You gave it the red and yellow arm stripes, the black base. You're taking these little tweaks and fixing what was an older jersey. And it's exactly why get the Islanders up on the screen. I'm not through ripping on this crappy design. It is almost as if the New York Islanders woke up the day that it was due. It said, oh God, that's due today. Someone get the Photoshop paint bucket fill. Change the blue. All right, great. Whew, thank God. God forbid we bring back what the fans actually want in the Gorton's Fisherman. God forbid that we do that. Which, by the way, the fact that they're like now selling backpacks and hats and like and knit caps with the fisherman logo in the wake of this is just ultimate trolling. It's just twisting the knife even more. Of like, we know you wanted it. You're not going to get it. It's going to be great. So that's first and foremost. Laziness gets the Islanders on my losers list. Next loser, Columbus Blue Jackets. Do me a favor. With your hand, cover up the logo. It's a Caps jersey. It's a Washington Capitals jersey that is posing as a Blue Jackets jersey. It is neither blue, nor is it a jacket. It is not a Columbus Blue Jackets jersey. It is ugly. The Blue Jackets have, bar none, the worst jersey history in the NHL, so this really shouldn't be a surprise. Final loser for me, in keeping with Rob's trend of gray jerseys being the absolute woe, Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg. Ugh. What is this? Who?
It is technically a play on their jersey when they were first in the league, but it's not done successfully, at least.
You have that logo, one of the most classic logos in hockey. Look at their Winter Classic jerseys from last year too, where it was the white with the navy and red trim. Oh, it was gorgeous. And what you did instead is make it the same color of just your pencil shavings. And I have this next to me. Forgive me for one moment, but now I have to go to prop comedy here. Do you remember the closet? Do you remember these?
Oh,
the Black Ice collection from the NHL was made. What year was this? This was 2014. 2014, they decided to sell these where it's like these NHL jerseys, but with just black and gray outlines. It's awful. It looks dreadful. And that's what the Rangers went with this time. They didn't bring back the Black Ice jersey. They instead listened to their fans, unlike the Islanders, and brought back a still flawed. I still would have gone with the red sleeves, the true classic look. But that is still what the fans wanted. The fans got what they wanted. So
I got a question.
Please.
Why are the Rangers putting a New Jersey landmark on their jersey?
Because Ellis Island belongs to New York State. Read a book.
Hey, I'm just saying, where is the Statue of Liberty located in the Hudson? On the Jersey side.
Yeah, but it is on New York property. How about the fact that in the midst of this debate, the New Jersey Devils tweeted out a picture of their jersey over the Rockefeller Christmas tree? Where's Rockefeller, Devils?
Hey, it looks better than the tree. It looks better than the tree does.
That's true.
I don't have a picture, gentlemen, of the Rockefeller Christmas tree. It certainly looks like one that could use a little bit of trimming
You'll see it.
But Casey, Joey certainly had a comment for you, and he said that Luke called Mike Milbury and asked his thoughts about the reverse retro. So.
Who is calling Mike Milbury for any thoughts on anything now?
All right, Larry, why don't you wrap this up for us?
All right, so you've shown most of the pictures. So my wins were the LA Kings and the Montreal Canadiens. So I like them. I like with the Kings going to the purple and gold, and I actually like how the Canadiens jerseys do look with them being predominantly blue. But speaking of teams that are being ironic, I think the Blues jersey being red is actually terrible.
It is. Don't you worry. It is awful.
Even though I actually do miss. I'm not going to lie to you, Larry. I do miss the old Wayne Gretzky when he was there for about 2 seconds, wearing that red jersey. Back in 1995 at that point when he faced Yzerman and the Red Wings in the Western Conference playoffs. But
Steve Yzerman.
Yeah,
those jerseys are attributed to one of the most iconic goals in playoff. Oh, that's what 2020 is under the Christmas tree.
It looks like the Rockefeller Christmas tree does need a little bit of love. I'm not gonna lie, but
it needs to not be in 2020 is what it needs.
I didn't know Charlie Brown was in charge of decorating.
But Larry, I don't disagree with you. That Blues jersey is garbage.
Dreadful.
It looks like it looked like a kindergartner's homework assignment. You had to color in with Crayola and look at that.
There it is.
And then the kid mixed the numbers up and did it backwards. And I wasn't a fan of the Maple Leafs jersey either. Talk about uninspired.
Oh, yeah, no. The Maple Leafs jersey, what was that logo? Like, what were they doing? Like, I don't remember that ever being a logo. It just looks weird.
You know what I would have liked to see for the Maple Leafs is if they took a retro logo or even their current logo and gave it the design of either the Arenas or the St. Pat's, where it has like the crazy center stripe going on, where it's like multi-tiered. It's very old-fashioned. Love that look. They wore a St. Pat's throwback, I think, at some
point. Look at it!
Yeah. It looks like a poncho in this picture too.
Yeah, not for nothing. Why is it so bell-shaped in this one?
I think what it is a little more is the fact that Islander fans will certainly be peeling on John Tavares for wearing a jersey like that. So
yeah, that'll give Islanders
for our Islanders faithful that are watching, I'm sure
something more for them not to let go of.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Larry, you got
I did not upload it tonight, but I do want to give a little bit of credit. It was actually one of my favorite jerseys growing up, and I know that Joey's actually been from behind the scenes uploading a couple of these jerseys for us. But was the Florida Panthers. I love the fact that as a kid they wore the blue jerseys. It reminds me of the Scott Mellenby days, and even though I know the Panthers can't attract more than about four people on this podcast to their home games, but it was great to see them want to bring back the blue jerseys. I miss when they another team that I never wanted to rebrand, and it was just great to see them bring back the navy blues. Speaking of, there we go. So it's great. The red on the shoulders, the blue with the cat. I just did not like the rebrand. This just goes back to the 90s for me when the Panthers made that run to the Stanley Cup final in 95. That was just pure heritage in every way, because I'm not sure if we'll ever see the Florida Panthers in a Winter Classic where they might bring back a jersey like that. So maybe we might see them in a Beach Classic or something like that. But even if the Panthers survive, all right, guys, let's wrap this up. We do not talk a lot of NBA on this show, but tonight that is going to change a little bit. It just seems like the NBA draft had just ended. We saw Obi Toppin from the University of Dayton get drafted by the Knicks last night. The Knicks faithful is absolutely thrilled with the draft pick. I really don't want to talk too much about the draft because we really don't know what we're going to get or what we're going to see out of these players, especially like a LaMelo Ball or a James Wiseman who did not really have collegiate careers. But the Rockets seem like they're ready to blow it up at this point. Robert Covington has been shipped off to Portland. There's talk that their two best players at this point now, Russell Westbrook and James Harden, who they thought they were going to win a championship with, are now being shopped. Rumors of Russell Westbrook to the Knicks, James Harden to the Nets. That's going to be an absolute dumpster fire trying to combine him with Kyrie. But let's start with the Knicks here. Do we feel, buy or sell, do we feel that, and Casey, I'll start with you here. Do we feel that should the Knicks go down this route? We've seen this before. We saw it with Carmelo. Do we feel that the Knicks should be going down this route again of trying to grab a star player instead of trying to grow their talent from within?
I think that they would be able to do it without giving up any of their precious assets like Mitch or like Obi Toppin, who just joined the organization. Will they? No. I think it's becoming apparent that they are not going to prioritize getting Russell Westbrook. The reason why I don't think it would be the worst idea in the world is because the New York Knicks desperately need a brand overhaul in terms of how they handle people. Every single superstar that has come to the New York Knicks in the last 10 years has had an unceremonious exit. Going back to Jeremy Lin, if you wanted to. Jeremy Lin had Linsanity, and then crazy contract negotiation gets shipped off. Melo, it was kind of turbulent at the end. Could he play with Lin? Could he play with Porzingis? And then Porzingis, what happened there is, he gets traded in the blink of an eye. And everything is just cast in depression and around Madison Square Garden. So getting a superstar like Russell Westbrook, who wouldn't make them a 60-win team, but would probably get them to 500 just by showing up, proving that you can handle a star asset like that would go a long way towards attracting other people. That's, I think, kind of why Russell Westbrook shouldn't be immediately written off. And I don't think they should immediately write off Gordon Hayward either. I think that at this point, the Knicks need to prove that they can handle having a real player on their roster.
Well, the Celtics just announced, to your point, Casey, that they're not going to retain Gordon Hayward, which would be a a phenomenal guard where the Knicks are severely lacking in the backcourt. Rob, your thoughts? Russell Westbrook, 5th among active scorers in the NBA all time with 20,412. He ranks 43rd all time on the NBA's career scoring list. Are the Knicks and Russell Westbrook a match, buy or sell?
I'm going to sell it. I think this is not the right move for this kind of Knicks team. This is a team, obviously, like, look, I can't sugarcoat it. They haven't been very good. They've been all strands of not good the past few years. But so I don't think bringing in a guy like Russell Westbrook, who obviously wants to win, is going to help this team who needs to continue their rebuild, which they had a phenomenal draft. The 2 players they drafted, absolutely what they needed. They filled their needs. Phenomenal job there. Trading that other second-round pick was a little questionable, but in the end, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. But I do think that this would be kind of detrimental to the Knicks and their progress forward. I believe this would bring them a step backwards, especially if Russell Westbrook was the only thing that the Knicks did. Like, I think Casey was right in that they could look at someone like Gordon Hayward. If they got Russ, they'd also have to figure out a way to get him, which would also mean Jim Dolan, hey, buddy, can you spend a little money on us? Can you help us out here? But, I don't see it as a good fit.
Well, after the draft, we had already mentioned the players in the backcourt right now for the New York Knicks. Your top 2 point guards right now are Frank Ntilikina and Dennis Smith, both still very young. Dennis Smith only 22. But Larry, I mean, certainly getting a player like a Russell Westbrook would certainly transform the Knicks, who Rob used the words starting to progress, and I don't think those are words we've heard from the Knicks in a very long time.
Absolutely. And Russell Westbrook is a great player, and he would make an impact with the Knicks. But you know what the problem may be? The New York Knicks themselves, right? They have been a cursed I'm a Jet fan. The Knicks are up there with just being a cursed franchise of the last 20 years. You tell me, oh, the Knicks are going to get Russell Westbrook. I think to myself, oh, my God, he's going to get hurt. I just assume that Westbrook will all of a sudden just not perform to the same level. I think it's important that the Knicks do bring somebody in so they can attract free agents, because the whole concept of, hey, you can play at Madison Square Garden, that doesn't bring free agents in anymore. You're not going to get an ownership change. You're likely not going to get a culture change with the Knicks and Madison Square Garden themselves. But they got to do something in order to bring other players to New York, and especially when you got the Nets looking to bring some players in too, and now you don't even have that. Hey, you can play in New York, because there's another team that can also attract players to come in who actually are a little better.
Just over 10 minutes past the top of the hour here on the Primetime Rundown. Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, Casey Bryant, Larry Pertakwitz here talking NBA. Larry made a perfect mention there in regards to Russell Westbrook. The Rockets are also appear to be shopping James Harden, and Rob DeLuca and his homegrown New Jersey, I should say, Brooklyn Nets are at the top of the list of Harden's destinations of where he wants to go. For me, I kind of see it a little bit of an aging dumpster fire at this point for Brooklyn, just because we know that Kevin Durant can play with just about anybody on the court, but Kyrie is more or less, when he's healthy, the black hole of basketball. And James Harden, who also plays in the backcourt, would certainly create a lot of tension in that backcourt. I mean, we didn't see it a lot in Houston, but maybe we would with a personality like Kyrie's in Brooklyn. So yes, it would make them a contender. It feels a little bit like, even though these guys are in their prime and the other two were not, it feels a little Pierce Garnett-like based on maybe the players that would go back, or the prospects or the draft picks that would go back to Houston. But Rob, your take on a potential Harden trade?
This has my rigorous sell. Hard sell. I will sell it 50 times over if I have to. I do not want this man in Brooklyn. I don't want him in Philly either, as that seems to be a top option for him. But I want him less in Brooklyn, because it's going to cost the Nets way too much. This absolutely has shades of Pierce and Garnett all over again if this trade was to be pulled off. And I praise be to Adrian Wojnarowski, the NBA insider that everyone loves on Twitter, recently on a radio show said that the Nets and the Rockets are actually now rather far apart on reaching an agreement for James Harden. It was the best news I could have heard because this Nets core right now, with just Kyrie and KD, already has conference finals potential. It is not a bad team. It is a great team. And here's the thing. It will cost all your depth to get James Harden here. And if you somehow do not get that ring from that Super 3, which will be dead in 2 years because all Kyrie is going to do is complain, it's a disaster. Sell.
Casey and Larry, I want to throw a quick buy or sell at you guys. With or without James Harden, buy or sell at this point. Casey, we'll start with you. The Brooklyn Nets will be in the Eastern Conference Final in 2021. Buy or sell?
I'd sell that because I think that a lot of it depends on what other teams do in the offseason. It's very clear that the Boston Celtics are not done wheeling and dealing. I think that the Boston Celtics can't be left out of any conversation for any trade or any free agent because if they're losing Hayward, there's a very good chance they do a sign and trade. They've been linked to Westbrook. They've been linked to Oladipo. They've been linked to Harden. So there's so many question marks where even if they were able to get someone to replace the likes of Gordon Hayward from a scoring position, if they flip Kemba Walker for someone, they're just always retooling, always trying to get it into that position to get over the top and back into the finals. They're in win now mode. The Miami Heat are in win now mode. And if Dragic, who just re-signed, comes back healthy, comes back with Jimmy Buckets, that's a strong team. Philadelphia, they're linked to the James Harden discussion. So as it stands right now, as much as you would love to say, oh, they got KD and Kyrie, it's an automatic. They're going to win. I still don't think it's a complete guarantee because you don't know what Kevin Durant you're going to get, and you don't know how long until Kyrie. Unfortunately, you hate to say this about the guy, but you don't know how long until you start scratching your head about something he just said.
Larry, buy or sell on the Nets in the Eastern Conference Final in 2020?
Yeah, no, I'm going to sell as well for the same reasons. You know, Kevin Durant's been in the league for such a long time now. You don't know what player you'll have for the 2020, 2021 season. And, Kyrie is a great ball player, right? But the minute he's not happy, things could change on the court. They're not guaranteed to get Harden. There are other teams that are also trying to make a run. So, if they don't get him and somebody else does, especially in the East, it's going to cause more trouble for them.
Gentlemen, as we wrap up here for the third week in a row, we each, as hosts on this show, hand out our own kudos to something related maybe to what we discussed or something completely unrelated. Rob, let's start with you.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna give my kudos to Daniel Jones. Look, Jones, the Giants fans, we're starting to lose faith in you. Myself included, there's been a lot of question marks surrounding turnovers and just being able to, run this team late in the game without a screw up. And you finally delivered a flawless game against none other than the Philadelphia Eagles, a team we have been trying to beat for 4 years. And it just feels that much better that it came against a team like that. The losing streak is finally over. You have brought this team to a 2-game winning streak. Keep it going. Nice game on Sunday. Enjoy the bye week, and let's hit it hard in week 12.
Larry.
I was torn on my kudos, but you know what? The Met fan in me tells me I got to give it to Steve Cohen because you have the Robinson Cano story, same old Mets. The fans didn't act that way. Cohen gets on Twitter. Fans are telling him, hey, what are we going to use the money for? We're going to buy a bullpen cart? He goes, no. Bullpen carts can wait. We're investing it in the team. And, Ian, I know you're not a huge 7-line fan, but the 7-line tweet right after Cano got his suspension says it all. We basically got Marcus Stroman and like $5 million for the Cano suspension.
Casey.
So,
My kudos goes to Adam Fox this week. Adam Fox is defenseman for the New York Rangers. He announced earlier this week that he has personally raised almost $20,000 in the name of ALS research. He has partnered with Tackle ALS and Massachusetts General Hospital. It's a tremendous cause. It's a cause that's very near and dear to my heart. So Foxy has quickly risen in the ranks of favorite Rangers in Madison Square Garden. Kudos to you, Adam, for all that you have done in the charity work in the name of ALS.
My kudos tonight aren't so much kudos, but just really well wishes right now to Jim Boeheim and his family. Jim Boeheim had announced the other day that he had been diagnosed with COVID-19. The head men's basketball coach, as we all know, from Syracuse University. The numbers have been skyrocketing, especially in northern New York and central New York, in that area, the Syracuse, Rochester area. And just want to wish everybody the best, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody is safe and that hopefully we can move past this pandemic as quickly as possible. 8:20 here, just about 8:20 right now on the Primetime Rundown. I know we certainly went more than a few minutes over tonight, but I certainly can't thank Rob, Casey, Larry enough for joining us here this evening. Before we wrap it up, we certainly want to let people know what's coming up on the Eastern Observer. We continue our partnership with the New York Professional Scouts Association as Joey showcases former Baltimore Orioles Major League scout Jim Howard. This is the scout who found former closer Jim Johnson and starter Eric Bedard. That will come to you tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. right here on the Eastern Observer. We are 48 hours to Survivor Series, and tomorrow afternoon, the Essential Wrestling Podcast crew is here for a special episode. Al Carl, Ryan Joy, Tyler Adele, John Smith, John DeConti, and Gary Mehefe preview the Drew McIntyre Roman Reigns match, along with the rest of the Survivor Series card tomorrow, November 21st at 3 p.m. We here on the Primetime Rundown will be taking a break for the Thanksgiving holiday and hope you do so safely as well. But we will return 2 weeks from tonight, Friday, December 4th. Joey, Rob, I will not be here, but Joey, Rob, and the gang are back to deliver you 2 hours of talk on all of the latest topics in sports. And I'm sure that Joey and Rob will certainly give you their initial analysis on everything that's going on with the St. John's men's basketball program as their season is scheduled to kick off this Wednesday night against St. Peter's at Carnesecca Arena. And then at that point, by December 4th, ladies and gentlemen, we will be less than a month into the start of the NBA season. We will be in the home stretch of the NFL season heading into the playoffs. And then we have a month until the puck drops on the NHL season. So all of that on our next show 2 weeks from tonight, Friday, December 4th at 6 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer. And lastly, we'd like to be the first to announce that the Eastern Observer has partnered with the North American Wrestling Alliance in the great state of Florida. The Essential Wrestling Podcast will be welcoming professional wrestler Amber Nova and NAWA's owner Tony Capone to the show on Tuesday, December 8th, starting at 6 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer. All programming can also be seen on the I-95 Sports Network and Zingo Television Channel 198. One last time, ladies and gentlemen, for my co-host, Rob DeLuca, our special guest, Casey Bryant, Larry Pertakowitz, I'm Ian Schraier, wishing all of you out there a very happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time.